She was supposed to say, "I do," in front of 500 people. Instead, billionaire tech founder Lena Hartwell climbed into a stranger's car and disappeared into the streets of Manhattan, leaving behind a cathedral full of roses, a fiancé who'd been using her fortune as collateral, and the wreckage of the life she'd built on brilliance but not truth. The man behind the wheel? A single father with calloused hands and a daughter waiting at home who saw what no one else did. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is run. This is the story of two people who had nothing in common except the courage to choose honesty over everything else. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The morning light caught the stained glass windows of St. Patrick's Cathedral at an angle that made the whole building look like it was on fire. Ethan Brooks stood at the service entrance with his hands in the pockets of his black suit, watching the controlled chaos of a wedding that cost more than most people made in a decade. Florists moved like surgeons. Caterers whispered into headsets. Security personnel checked lists with the grim efficiency of people protecting nuclear codes. Ethan didn't belong here, and he knew it. He was here because Premium Executive Transport had assigned him the bride's family for the weekend, and because he needed the money. His daughter Mia's school registration was due in 2 weeks, and the envelope sitting on his kitchen counter wasn't going to fill itself. So he smiled when he needed to, kept his opinions to himself, and drove rich people to places they could have walked to if their shoes cost less. "You're the driver?" A woman in a severe gray suit materialized beside him, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Yes, ma'am. Ethan Brooks, Premium Executive. The bride needs to go to the plaza. Family photos. You'll take her in the Bentley, not the town car." "Understood?" "Understood." She was already walking away, barking orders into her headset, before Ethan could ask when or where or literally any useful detail. He'd learned that about events like this. Nobody told you anything because they assumed you already knew, and if you didn't know, you shouldn't be here. He made his way through the cathedral's side corridors, past rooms filled with bridesmaids in champagne-colored silk and groomsmen adjusting bow ties with the resigned expressions of men about to endure several hours of mandatory joy. The building smelled like lilies and old money. Somewhere, a string quartet was warming up, filling the vaulted space with elegant, aching sound. Ethan had been to St. Patrick's once before, years ago, when Sarah was still alive. They ducked in during a rainstorm, soaked and laughing, and she'd stood in the center aisle with her head tilted back, looking at the ceiling like she could see straight through to something beyond it. "You think buildings like this make it easier to believe?" she'd asked him. He'd kissed her instead of answering because he didn't know, and because her hair smelled like rain. He shook the memory loose. That was the thing about grief. It lived in your body like a second heartbeat, always there, sometimes quiet, never truly gone. The bridal suite was at the end of a hallway that probably cost more per square foot than his entire apartment. 2 security guards flanked the door, looking bored and dangerous in equal measure. Ethan approached with his hands visible and his posture deliberately non-threatening. "I'm here to drive the bride to the plaza," he said. "Family photos." One guard checked his list. "Name?" "Ethan Brooks, Premium Executive Transport." The guard nodded, but before he could open the door, something stopped him. A sound that didn't belong in a room preparing for a celebration. Someone was crying, not the delicate photogenic tears of a bride overwhelmed by joy. This was the raw, ragged sound of someone whose world was coming apart at the seams. The kind of crying you did when you thought no one could hear you. The guards exchanged glances. One shrugged. "Pre-wedding jitters," he muttered. "Happens all the time." But Ethan had been married. He knew the difference between nerves and devastation, and this was devastation. "Should someone—" he started. "Not our job," the second guard cut him off. "We keep people out. What happens inside is above our pay grade." The crying continued, muffled but unmistakable. Ethan stood there for a moment, every instinct screaming at him that something was wrong, that someone needed help, that he should do something. But what? He was a driver. He had no authority here, no standing, no right to interrupt whatever was happening behind that door. And yet, he thought about Mia, about the way she'd cried after Sarah died, Those first terrible weeks when grief was so big it seemed impossible that a 7-year-old body could contain it. He thought about how desperately he'd wanted someone, anyone, to make it stop, to fix it, to just acknowledge that something was broken. "I need to confirm the destination with the bride directly," Ethan said, the lie sliding out smooth and necessary. "Protocol for VIP transport." The first guard frowned. "Nobody said—" "It's in the contract. Confirmation of destination for any route change or additional stop. You want me to call my supervisor?" Ethan pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen with what he hoped looked like professional certainty. The guards exchanged another look. Finally, the first one sighed and knocked. 3 crisp raps that sounded like gunshots in the quiet hallway. "Miss Hartwell? The driver is here. He needs to confirm the plaza destination." The crying stopped abruptly. There was a long, terrible silence, and then a voice, steady despite everything, trained by years of boardrooms and hostile negotiations to never show weakness. "Send him in." The guard opened the door just wide enough for Ethan to slip through, then closed it firmly behind him, leaving him alone with a woman whose life was clearly falling apart. She stood with her back to him, facing the room's massive mirror, still wearing the robe she'd probably had on since morning. The wedding dress hung on a nearby rack like a ghost, all white silk and hand-sewn pearls that probably cost more than Ethan's car. Her dark hair was already styled, swept up in some complicated arrangement that exposed the vulnerable curve of her neck, and her makeup was perfect, or had been, before she'd cried most of it off. "The plaza, right?" she said without turning around. Her reflection watched him in the mirror, eyes red-rimmed and sharp. "For the photos that will run in every society page and gossip site, from here to Singapore. Photos of me smiling next to the man I'm about to marry. The man who—" Her voice cracked. She pressed her fingers against her mouth, hard, like she could physically hold the words back. Ethan should have left, should have confirmed the destination, walked out, waited by the car like he was paid to do. But he'd heard that particular note in her voice before. The sound of someone drowning in plain sight, while everyone around them looked the other way. "You don't have to go," he said quietly. She laughed, a bitter sound with sharp edges. "Don't I?" "Not with me, anyway. I'm just the driver. I can tell them you need more time, that you're not ready." "I'll never be ready." She turned to face him now, and Ethan was struck by how young she looked despite everything. 30, maybe, but with eyes that had seen too much of the world's machinery. "Do you know who I am?" "Should I?" "Lena Hartwell, founder and CEO of Hartwell Technologies. Net worth somewhere north of $3 billion, depending on the stock price." She said it like a diagnosis, like naming a disease. "And in about 4 hours, I'm supposed to marry James Whitmore III, venture capitalist, Princeton legacy, and, as I discovered approximately 45 minutes ago, a man who's been systematically positioning himself to take control of my company through a series of shell corporations and carefully structured agreements that I've been signing like an idiot for the past year." Ethan absorbed this, watching her face. "How did you find out?" "My CFO has better instincts than I do." She spent the last 2 weeks quietly auditing everything James had asked me to sign, every merger and partnership and restructuring proposal. Then she sent me a file this morning, didn't even put it in an email, handed me a physical thumb drive like we're in a spy movie, showing exactly how he's been building a legal framework to seize majority control within 6 months of our marriage. Lena's hands were shaking. She gripped the edge of the vanity to steady them. The wedding isn't a celebration. It's a corporate acquisition. Jesus. I built that company from nothing. I was 22 years old, working out of a shared office space in Brooklyn, eating ramen and sleeping under my desk. 10 years of 16-hour days and venture capital meetings where men twice my age told me to smile more, to be less aggressive, to let the adults handle the real decisions. Her voice was rising now, years of controlled composure finally cracking. I fought for every inch of ground, every contract, every innovation, and I was about to hand it all to a man who saw me as a stepping stone. Ethan moved closer, slowly, like approaching someone on a ledge. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." The admission seemed to cost her something. "If I walk out, it'll be a scandal. My family will be humiliated. My board will panic. Every business rival I have will see it as weakness, as proof that women can't handle pressure. And James, James will spin this somehow. He's already positioned himself as the stabilizing force in my life, the steady hand guiding the brilliant but emotional founder. If I leave him at the altar, he becomes the victim and I become the unstable woman who couldn't handle commitment. But if you go through with it, I lose everything anyway, just slower, more politely. She met his eyes in the mirror. Why did you really come in here? Not to confirm the destination. Ethan could have deflected, could have stuck to the lie. But something about this moment, this woman standing in a destroyed bridal suite, naming her truth while the world waited for her to perform, demanded honesty. Because you sounded like my daughter did when her mother died, he said simply. Like someone who needed a door left open, even if it was just a crack. Lena turned fully now, studying him with an intensity that felt like being x-rayed. You're a single father. Yeah. And you're working this wedding because you need the money. Yeah. So you understand about being trapped by circumstances, about making choices because you don't have other options. I understand about doing what you have to do to protect the people who depend on you, Ethan corrected gently. But I also understand that sometimes the thing that looks like the only option is actually just the easiest lie to tell yourself. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the string quartet had moved into something that sounded like Pachelbel's canon, which meant the ceremony was getting close. Time was running out. What's your name? She asked. Ethan Brooks. Well, Ethan Brooks. Lena straightened her shoulders and something shifted in her expression, the look of someone making a decision that couldn't be unmade. How fast can that Bentley go? Ethan felt his heart rate kick up. Fast enough. Why? Because I'm about to do something incredibly stupid or incredibly brave, and I haven't decided which yet. She moved to the wardrobe and grabbed a long coat, cashmere, probably designer, the kind of thing you threw on for coffee runs to places where coffee costs $12. There's a service exit near the cathedral office. It leads to 51st Street. If we go now before the final preparations, we can probably get out before anyone realizes I'm gone. Miss Hartwell? Lena. She was pulling on the coat, covering the robe and the evidence of her almost wedding. If I'm running away from my own wedding with a stranger, I think we can skip the formalities. Lena. Ethan tried to put every ounce of caution into her name. If you do this, there's no taking it back. The moment you walk out that door, everything changes. Everything already changed the moment I read that file. I'm just catching up. She grabbed a small bag, a purse, he realized, the kind women carried when they needed to have their whole life compressed into something they could hold in one hand. I need to disappear for a few hours, maybe a day. Long enough to think, to make some calls, to figure out my next move without 500 people watching me do it. Can you help me? Every reasonable instinct Ethan had was screaming at him to say no, to walk away, to let this billionaire heiress figure out her own problems while he protected his job and his ability to provide for Mia. Getting involved in something like this was asking for trouble. The kind of trouble that came with lawsuits and NDAs and very expensive lawyers. But he looked at Lena's face, at the desperate courage there, and he thought about what it cost to ask a stranger for help, when you'd spent your whole life being the one everyone else leaned on. Yeah, he heard himself say. I can help you. The relief that flooded her expression was almost painful to witness. Thank you. But we need to move fast. Once they realize you're gone, they'll lock down every exit. Lena nodded sharply, all business now that a decision had been made. She moved to the door, pressed her ear against it, listening. The hallway outside was quiet, the calm before the storm of the ceremony itself. When I open this door, Ethan said quietly, act like we're discussing logistics. Wedding timeline, photo schedule, whatever. Just walk with confidence like you're supposed to be leaving. I'm very good at acting like I'm supposed to be somewhere, Lena said, and there was a lifetime of learned performance in those words. Ethan opened the door. The guards barely glanced at them as they emerged, too busy checking their phones and looking bored. Lena fell into step beside him, and they walked down the corridor like they belonged there, like this was all part of the plan. The photos at the plaza are absolutely essential, Lena was saying, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. My mother will have an absolute fit if the lighting isn't perfect. Yes, ma'am, I've already coordinated with the hotel. They turned a corner. The cathedral was a maze of hallways and side rooms, spaces built centuries ago and repurposed for modern needs. Ethan had studied the layout earlier, habit from his years as an EMT, when knowing the exits meant the difference between life and death. The service entrance was through the administrative offices, past the storage rooms where they kept the vestments and the candles and all the practical necessities of running a cathedral. They passed a woman carrying an armful of programs. A maintenance worker pushed a cart of folding chairs. Nobody questioned them. That was the thing about confidence. If you acted like you belonged, people assumed you did. The administrative office was unlocked, empty. Beyond it, a plain door with a push bar, the kind designed for quick exits, for emergencies. Ethan hit the bar, and they stepped out into the startling brightness of a New York morning. 51st Street was already busy. Tourists and locals, delivery trucks and yellow cabs, the endless motion of a city that never stopped moving. Ethan had parked the Bentley around the block as instructed, which meant they had to walk. He kept his body between Lena and the street, blocking her from casual observation, and she kept her head down, the collar of her coat turned up. "This is insane," she murmured. "Yeah. I don't do insane. I do calculated, strategic, risk-assessed." "How's that working out?" She actually laughed, short and startled, like the sound surprised her. "Point taken." The Bentley was where he'd left it, sleek and black and worth more than most people's houses. Ethan unlocked it remotely and opened the back door, but Lena shook her head. "Front seat," she said. "If I'm running away from my wedding, I'm not doing it like a passenger." They got in. Ethan started the engine. The Bentley purred to life with the kind of refined power that was designed to remind you exactly how much money you were sitting in, and pulled into traffic. Behind them, St. Patrick's Cathedral receded, and with it, the life Lena had been building toward all morning. "Where to?" Ethan asked. Lena stared out this window at the city flowing past. "I have no idea. That's not a destination I can put into the GPS. Can we just drive? For a while? I need to think." So Ethan drove. He headed west, away from Midtown, away from the plaza and the society photographers waiting to capture the perfect bride. He drove like he was giving someone space to breathe, taking corners smoothly, avoiding the chaos of major intersections. The Bentley moved through the city like it owned the streets, and maybe it did. Money had that effect, creating invisible corridors of privilege everywhere it went. Lena pulled out her phone, looked at it for a long moment, then powered it completely off. "The moment I turn this back on, they'll find me. GPS tracking, cell towers, probably 6 other surveillance methods I don't even know about. James has friends in security circles. High-level friends. How long do you think it'll take them to realize you're gone?" 20 minutes, maybe 30. They're doing final prep right now, flowers, music, seating arrangements. Someone will go to tell me it's time, and I won't be there. Then they'll panic, quietly at first, thinking I'm in the bathroom, or having a moment. But when they can't find me, she trailed off, imagining the chaos. My mother is going to lose her mind. What about James? Lena's expression hardened. James will do what James does best. Calculate the angles, figure out how to spin this to his advantage, and start making calls to his lawyers. He's probably already considered this scenario. Men like him always have contingencies. They crossed into Chelsea. The streets here were quieter, lined with brownstones and small parks where parents pushed strollers and dogs strained against leashes. Normal life, Ethan thought, the kind that existed in the gaps between wealth and spectacle. "I should probably take you somewhere safe," Ethan said. "A hotel, maybe? Somewhere you can—" "No." Lena's voice was sharp. "Hotels require IDs, credit cards. The moment I check in anywhere, I leave a trail. And I can't go to friends. They're all intertwined with James somehow, with his family, with the business. Half of them probably knew what he was doing and said nothing." "Family?" "Even worse. My mother orchestrated this entire relationship. She was thrilled when James started pursuing me. Finally, her difficult daughter was going to marry well, marry properly, marry into the kind of establishment dynasty that would make everyone forget I'd made my money in something as crass as technology." The bitterness in Lena's voice could have stripped paint. She'll be on his side. She always has been. Ethan absorbed this, the pieces of Lena's isolation coming into focus. "So where does that leave us?" "Us?" Lena looked at him, really looked at him, like she was only now considering the full weight of what she'd asked him to do. You have a daughter. You said that, right? A daughter who needs you to have a job and a clean record and stability. Helping me is risking all of that. Yeah, Ethan agreed. It is. So why are you still driving? Ethan thought about that as he navigated through traffic. Why was he still driving? The smart move would have been to drop her at a subway station, wish her luck, and get back to the cathedral before anyone connected him to her disappearance. He'd fulfilled his moral obligation by getting her out. Anything beyond that was just asking for complications. But he kept seeing her face in that mirror, kept hearing the rawness in her voice when she'd named what was being done to her. And he thought about Sarah, about the way grief had taught him that the worst thing in the world wasn't making the wrong choice. It was standing still and making no choice at all while someone suffered. Because running away from your own wedding in a borrowed coat with a stranger shouldn't be something you have to do alone, he said finally. And because someone should witness that you tried to save yourself, even if no one else sees it. Lena's eyes were bright suddenly, threatening tears she visibly refused to let fall. You don't even know me. No, but I know what it costs to ask for help, and I know how much courage it takes to walk away from something everyone else thinks you should want. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Ethan's phone started buzzing in his pocket, probably the wedding coordinator or his dispatcher, wondering where he was. He ignored it. Some bridges, once you started crossing them, you had to commit to reaching the other side. I have an apartment, Ethan said carefully. It's not much. 2 bedrooms in Queens, above a laundromat. My daughter's at a weekend program until 5. You could stay there for a few hours, figure out your next move. Make whatever calls you need to make. Why would you do that? Because the alternative is dropping you on a street corner and hoping you don't get hurt. Ethan glanced at her. And because my daughter would ask me what I did today, and I'd like to be able to tell her I helped someone when they needed it. She's 8. Kids still believe the world is supposed to work that way. Lena was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Your wife, her mother, died 2 years ago, brain aneurysm. She was 31 years old and perfectly healthy right up until she wasn't. The words still felt like swallowing glass, but they came easier than they used to. So yeah, I know something about plans falling apart. I'm sorry. Me too. Ethan merged onto the Queensboro Bridge, leaving Manhattan behind. Look, you don't have to decide right now, but the offer stands. A few hours, a safe place to think. No cameras, no security, no one tracking your credit cards. Just space. Lena looked out at the East River flowing beneath them, at the city skyline receding in the rearview mirror. She'd built her empire there, had fought and bled and sacrificed for every inch of ground, and now she was leaving it behind, fleeing in a stranger's car toward an uncertain future. Okay, she said finally. Okay, thank you. They drove into Queens as the morning deepened toward noon, leaving behind a cathedral full of unanswered questions and a wedding that would never happen. Behind them, Ethan's phone kept buzzing. Ahead, the future was uncertain and potentially disastrous. But for right now, in this moment, a woman who'd been drowning had found someone willing to throw her a rope. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. And as the Bentley carried them away from the wreckage of a life that hadn't quite been real, toward something undefined and unplanned, Ethan thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd both made the right choice, even if neither of them knew yet what came next. The apartment building sat on a quiet street in Astoria, wedged between a Greek bakery that made the whole block smell like honey and cinnamon, and a laundromat whose neon sign had been flickering the same erratic pattern for 3 years. Ethan pulled the Bentley into a loading zone, illegal parking, but the car was so out of place in this neighborhood that it practically screamed temporary and killed the engine. Lena stared up at the building through the windshield. It was old but maintained, the kind of place where working families lived paycheck to paycheck, and the superintendent actually knew everyone's names. This is where you live. 3rd floor. The elevator works most of the time. Ethan pocketed the keys and opened his door. Come on, we shouldn't leave the car here too long. They climbed out into the midday heat. A group of kids were playing handball against the side of the building, their shouts echoing off brick and concrete. An elderly woman watering plants on a fire escape called down something in Spanish that Ethan didn't catch but waved to anyway. Lena pulled her coat tighter despite the temperature, using it like armor. The building's entrance was propped open with a brick, a violation of at least 3 safety codes that nobody bothered enforcing because it was easier than fishing for keys when your hands were full of groceries. They climbed stairs that smelled like cooking oil and cleaning products, past doors decorated with wreaths and doorbell cameras, and the accumulated evidence of lives being lived. "I should warn you," Ethan said as he unlocked his door. "It's not exactly what you're used to." "I started my company in a 100-square-foot office with 2 folding chairs and a card table," Lena replied. "I think I can handle it." But her expression when she stepped inside suggested otherwise. Not disgust or judgment exactly, but the visible recalibration of someone whose baseline for normal had shifted so far from reality that she'd forgotten what ordinary life looked like. The apartment was small and lived in, the kind of space that revealed its occupants in every detail. A child's drawings covered the refrigerator, held up by magnets shaped like letters. Textbooks were stacked on the coffee table next to a laptop that had seen better days. The couch was worn but clean, covered with a throw blanket that looked handmade. Everything was organized with the careful efficiency of someone who didn't have room for waste, not of space, not of money, not of time. "The bathroom's down the hall," Ethan said, moving into the kitchen to fill a glass with water. "You can use my room if you need to make calls or just sit for a while. I'll stay out here." Lena accepted the water but didn't drink. She stood in the center of the living room like she'd forgotten how to exist in a space that wasn't designed to impress anyone. "You keep your home very neat." "Single parent. If I let things get messy, it becomes chaos pretty fast." Ethan gestured to the couch. "Please, sit. You've got to be exhausted." She sat, and the moment she did, something in her posture crumpled. The adrenaline that had carried her through the escape was wearing off, leaving behind the full weight of what she'd done. "What time is it?" Ethan checked his phone. 17 missed calls, 9 voicemails, a string of increasingly frantic texts from his dispatcher. "Just past noon." "So they know. Everyone knows by now." Lena set the water down with shaking hands. "The ceremony was supposed to start at 11:30. When I wasn't there, when they couldn't find me..." She pressed her palms against her eyes. "This is real. I actually did this." "Yeah, you did. I ran away from my own wedding like some kind of..." She stopped, searching for words. "Like a coward." "No." Ethan's voice was firm. A coward would have gone through with it, would have stood up there and said vows she didn't mean to a man who was stealing from her just because it was easier than facing the consequences of honesty. Lena lowered her hands. Her makeup was completely ruined now, black streaks of mascara cutting paths down her cheeks, but she looked more real than she had in the cathedral, more human, more present. "You don't understand what this means. The scandal, the media coverage, every business decision I've made for the past decade will be re-examined through the lens of unstable woman who couldn't handle marriage. My stock price will drop. My board will lose confidence. Competitors who've been waiting for an opening will see this as blood in the water." "Maybe," Ethan conceded, "or maybe they'll see a CEO who refused to be manipulated. Someone strong enough to walk away from a bad situation even when it cost her everything. That's not how the world works." "It's how it should work." Lena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You sound like I did 10 years ago, before I learned that principles are expensive and compromise is how you survive." "Is that what you were doing?" Ethan asked quietly. "Surviving? Because from where I'm standing, it looked more like you were drowning." The words hung between them, sharp and uncomfortably true. Lena looked away, focusing on the drawings on the refrigerator. "Your daughter, what's her name?" "Mia." "She's 8? "Yeah. 2nd grade. Obsessed with space exploration and convinced she's going to be the first person to walk on Mars." Ethan's voice softened the way it always did when he talked about Mia. "She's at a weekend STEM program at the community center. Coding basics, simple robotics, that kind of thing. Comes home every week with a new plan to revolutionize something." "She sounds wonderful." "She is. She's..." Ethan paused, choosing his words. "After Sarah died, Mia was the only reason I got out of bed. Still is, most days. You do things for your kid that you'd never do for yourself. Find strength in places you didn't know existed. Lena studied him with an expression that was hard to read. You're a good father. I'm a broke father who's probably about to lose his job for helping a billionaire run away from her wedding, Ethan corrected, pulling out his phone to check the messages. But I'm trying. The voicemails were what he expected, his dispatcher growing progressively more agitated, the wedding coordinator demanding to know where he'd taken the bride, a message from Premium Executive Transport's owner that was just 20 seconds of creative profanity. Ethan deleted them all and turned the phone face down. You're in trouble because of me, Lena said. I'm in trouble because I made a choice. That's on me, not you. But you made it to help me. That has to count for something. It does. It means I can look my daughter in the eye tonight and tell her I did the right thing. Ethan moved to the kitchen, suddenly needing something to do with his hands. You hungry? I can make sandwiches. Nothing fancy, but... Ethan, Lena's voice stopped him. Why are you being so kind to me? He turned to face her. She was still sitting on the couch, this brilliant, powerful woman who'd built an empire and fled from a cathedral, looking lost in his small apartment like a ship without anchor. Because kindness doesn't require a reason, he said simply. And because I know what it's like to feel alone even when you're surrounded by people. After Sarah died, I had friends and family and neighbors all trying to help, but most of them didn't know how. They said the right things but didn't mean them, or meant them but didn't follow through. The person who actually saved me was my dispatcher at the ambulance company. This gruff woman named Rita, who showed up at my door 3 weeks after the funeral with groceries and a casserole and told me she was going to watch Mia for 4 hours while I took a shower and remembered I was human. Didn't ask permission, didn't wait for me to say I needed help. Just did it. Did you ever thank her? Every day. I pay it forward when I can. Ethan opened the refrigerator, surveying its contents. Turkey and cheese okay? I haven't eaten anything since yesterday, Lena admitted. I was too nervous. And then this morning, after I read the file, she trailed off. Turkey and cheese sounds perfect. Ethan made sandwiches while Lena used the bathroom, and when she came back, her face was scrubbed clean and her hair was down, falling in dark waves around her shoulders. Without the wedding styling and the armor of makeup, she looked younger, vulnerable in a way that probably terrified her. They ate at the small kitchen table, and for a few minutes there was just the quiet sound of food and relief. Lena ate like someone remembering that bodies needed fuel, mechanical at first, but then with increasing appreciation. This is good, she said. When was the last time I ate something that wasn't at a business dinner or a catered event? When was the last time you did anything that wasn't scheduled or strategic? Lena considered this. I don't remember. Years, maybe. Everything became about the company, about growth and market share and proving I belonged at tables full of men who didn't want me there. And then James... She stopped. He seemed different, like he saw me, not just the business. He was charming and attentive and said all the right things about partnership and equals. I thought I'd finally found someone who understood the weight of building something from nothing. But he just wanted to take it from you. Worse, he wanted to make me complicit in my own diminishment. Every contract I signed, every agreement I nodded through, he was building a cage so slowly that I didn't notice the bars until it was almost too late. Lena set down her sandwich. How could I be so smart about business and so stupid about him? You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. Those are different things. Are they? Hope feels pretty stupid right now. Hope is what gets you out of bed when everything is broken, Ethan said. Trust me, I know. After Sarah died, I spent 6 months going through the motions, taking care of Mia, working double shifts, paying bills, but I wasn't really living. I was just surviving. And then one day Mia asked me if I was sad because I missed Mommy or because I was scared to be happy again. What did you tell her? The truth, that I was scared, that every time I felt joy, it felt like betraying Sarah's memory. Like moving forward meant leaving her behind. Ethan met Lena's eyes. And Mia said, but Mommy would want you to be happy. That's what love means. She was 6 years old and understood something I'd forgotten, that hope isn't stupid. It's the only thing that matters. Lena was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, sirens and music, voices and traffic. the sound of millions of people living their lives in parallel streams. I need to turn my phone on, Lena said finally. Make some calls, start dealing with this. Are you ready for that? No. But I don't think waiting will make it easier. Ethan cleared the plates while Lena retrieved her phone from her purse. She powered it on, and immediately it exploded with notifications. Texts, emails, missed calls, the digital evidence of a life in crisis. She scrolled through them with an expression that shifted from resignation to anger to something harder to define. 67 missed calls from James, she said, 42 from my mother. My CFO sent 16 texts asking if I'm safe. My assistant is having a nervous breakdown via email, and she stopped, staring at the screen. There's a statement. James released a statement to the press. Already? Of course already. He's probably been writing different versions since the moment he realized I knew. Lena read aloud, her voice flat. It is with deep sadness that James Whitmore announces the postponement of today's planned wedding to Lena Hartwell. Miss Hartwell is experiencing significant personal challenges that have affected her judgment and emotional stability. Mr. Whitmore remains committed to supporting her through this difficult time and asks for privacy as they navigate these circumstances together. She looked up. He's painting me as mentally unstable. Classic strategy. Discredit the opponent, control the narrative, position himself as the sympathetic party. That's garbage. That's effective. By tomorrow, every tech blog and business publication will be running pieces about my fitness to lead. Board members will start making calls. Investors will get nervous. Lena's jaw tightened. He's not just protecting himself, he's accelerating the timeline. If he can get me declared unfit, he can trigger the clauses in our agreements that let him take control during periods of executive incapacity. Can he do that? If he convinces enough people I'm having a breakdown? Absolutely. The corporate world runs on confidence and perception. Right now, I look like someone who cracked under pressure. And pressure is exactly what I'm about to face from every direction. Ethan watched her mind work, saw the calculations happening behind her eyes. This was her battlefield, he realized, not physical space, but information and influence, the invisible architecture of power and perception. So what do? He asked. I fight back. Lena's voice was steel now, the vulnerability of moments ago replaced by something sharper. I release my own statement. I call my CFO and my lawyers, and we start documenting everything. Every forged signature, every shell corporation, every illegal maneuver. I go public with exactly what James was trying to do, and I make it impossible for him to spin this as anything other than what it is, attempted corporate theft. That'll be ugly. It'll be war, but at least it'll be honest war. She stood up, pacing now, energy returning. I need a laptop, and I need to make some calls from a secure line. My phone is definitely compromised. James has the passwords, probably installed tracking software. I've been so careful with company security and so careless with my personal technology. You can use my laptop. It's old and slow, but it works. Perfect. The last thing they'll expect is for me to be working from a 5-year-old Dell in Queens. Something like a smile flickered across Lena's face. Can I impose on your hospitality a little longer? As long as you need. Thank you. I mean it. Thank you. Most people aren't here, Ethan interrupted gently. I am. So let's focus on what happens next instead of what might have been. Lena nodded, already pulling up contacts on her phone. I'm calling my CFO first. Rachel Martinez. She's the one who figured out what James was doing. If anyone can help me document this properly, it's her. She stepped into Ethan's bedroom for privacy, closing the door. Through the thin walls, he could hear the rise and fall of her voice, sharp and commanding, the tone of someone used to being listened to. She was rebuilding her armor in real time, transforming from a runaway bride into a CEO ready for battle. Ethan sat on the couch and finally, reluctantly, called his dispatcher back. Ethan Brooks? You have exactly 10 seconds to explain where the hell you are and where the hell my Bentley is before I call the police and report it stolen. Karen, listen. No, you listen. I have the Hartwell family screaming at me, premium executive threatening to sue us, and a very angry wedding coordinator who says you kidnapped the bride. Kidnapped, Ethan. Do you understand how much trouble you're in? I didn't kidnap anyone. She asked for help, and I helped her. That's it. Where is she? Safe. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Ethan kept his voice calm despite the adrenaline. Karen, I know this looks bad, but Miss Hartwell was in distress and needed to get away from a dangerous situation. I did what anyone should have done. Anyone else would have called security or her family, or literally anyone except taking her and disappearing. Karen's voice softened slightly. Ethan, I've known you for 5 years. You're reliable, you're professional, you show up when you say you will, but this is career-ending stuff, not just for you, for the entire company. We're a small operation. We can't afford this kind of liability. I know. So bring back the car. Tell me where she is. Let me try to smooth this over before it gets worse. Ethan closed his eyes. He could do it. Could give Karen this address. Could step back and let other people handle Lena's problems. Could protect his job and his reputation and his ability to provide for Mia. It would be the smart move, the safe move, the move any reasonable person would make. I can't do that, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Karen. I really am. But I can't. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Ethan thought the call had dropped. Finally, Karen spoke, and she sounded tired. Then you're fired, effective immediately, and I have to report the car is missing, which means police will be looking for it. You've got maybe an hour before this becomes a legal issue, not just an employment one. I understand. Do you? Do you understand that you're throwing away your livelihood for a woman you don't know? A billionaire who has lawyers and resources and can handle her own problems? Yeah, I do understand that. Why, Ethan? Just tell me why. He thought about Lena's face in the mirror, about the sound of her crying through a door nobody else wanted to open, about Mia asking him once if he was brave like the astronauts she admired. Because someone had to, he said simply. And I was there. Karen sighed. You're either the best man I've ever met or the dumbest. I honestly can't tell which. Probably both. Return the car to the office address within the hour. Leave the keys in the drop box. After that, you and I are done. I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am. The call ended. Ethan sat with his phone in his hand, processing what had just happened. Fired, unemployed, and probably about to be questioned by police. All for a woman he'd met 3 hours ago. The bedroom door opened. Lena emerged and the transformation was complete. She'd pulled her hair back. Her posture was straight, and her eyes had the sharp focus of someone ready for war. But when she saw his face, she stopped. What happened? Lost my job. Need to return the car within the hour. They're probably going to file a police report for the vehicle. Because of me. Because of choices I made. There's a difference. Lena crossed the room and sat beside him on the couch. I'll fix this. I'll call premium executive, explain everything, make sure you're compensated. I don't want your money, Lena. Then what do you want? Ethan looked at her, this complicated woman who was simultaneously brilliant and broken, powerful and vulnerable, running from a cathedral but ready to fight an empire. I want you to win, he said. Whatever battle you're about to fight, I want you to win it. Not because you paid someone to clear the path, but because you're smart and strong and refuse to be diminished. That's what I want. Lena's eyes were bright again, but this time she didn't try to hide the tears. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you walked away from everything rather than live a lie. I know you're scared but doing it anyway. And I know that the world needs more people who choose truth over convenience, even when it costs them. It's costing you. Yeah, but I'll figure it out. I always do. Ethan stood up. Come on, we need to get the car back before this becomes a legal issue. I'll call a cab to get home. You're not taking a cab. Lena was on her feet too, decisive now. Rachel is sending a secure car service, real secure. People who work with executives who need protection. They'll pick up the Bentley and return it, and they'll make sure you get home safely. Lena, this isn't charity. It's practicality. You helped me when nobody else would. The least I can do is make sure helping me doesn't destroy your life. She picked up Ethan's laptop, already moving into CEO mode. Rachel's lawyers are drafting a statement. We're going to release everything, the shell corporations, the forged documents, all of it. And we're going to make it very clear that I left the wedding because I discovered criminal activity, not because I'm having a breakdown. James will fight back. Let him. I've been fighting men like him my entire career. The difference is, now I'm done pretending to be polite about it. Lena's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. He wanted my company. He's about to find out what it costs to go after something I built. Ethan watched her work, watched her make calls and type emails and coordinate with people he'd never heard of who wielded the kind of power that moved markets. This was her element, he realized, not wedding ceremonies or society pages, but the brutal clarity of competition and strategy. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Car service arriving in 15 minutes. Driver will handle Bentley return and ensure your safety. RM. Rachel works fast, Ethan observed. I pay her to work fast. Lena looked up from the laptop. Ethan, I need to stay here a bit longer if that's okay. Get the statement released, coordinate with the legal team, make sure everything is airtight before James has a chance to respond. A few more hours, maybe less. What time do you need to pick up Mia? 5 o'clock. I'll be gone by 4. You won't even know I was here. But that wasn't true, and they both knew it. Lena had already changed the shape of this apartment, had brought crisis and courage and complicated truth into a space that had been defined by quiet survival. And Ethan had already changed something in her too, had reminded her that kindness existed, that not everyone wanted something from her, that sometimes help came from the most unexpected places. The car service arrived exactly when promised, a dark SUV with tinted windows and a driver who barely spoke. Ethan handed over the Bentley keys and watched them drive away, taking with them the last physical evidence of this strange morning. When he came back upstairs, Lena was deep in conversation with someone on speakerphone, her voice clinical and precise as she walked them through documentation procedures. She barely acknowledged his return, just held up one finger in a "give me a minute" gesture that stretched into 10, then 20. Ethan sat quietly and waited. Outside, the afternoon pressed forward. The handball game had ended, replaced by the sounds of families coming home from Saturday errands. The bakery was probably closing soon, the laundromat filling with people who worked 6 days a week and used Saturdays to catch up on everything else. His normal life was still out there, waiting. But for these few hours, he'd stepped sideways into something else, into drama and danger, into a story that would probably make a good anecdote someday if it didn't destroy him first. Done. Lena ended the call and closed the laptop. Statements released. Legal team has filed complaints with 3 regulatory agencies. James's lawyers are going to wake up Monday morning to a nightmare of their own making. How do you feel? Terrified. Exhilarated. Like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm still not sure if I'm flying or falling. She looked at him. How do you feel? Unemployed, but weirdly okay about it. Lena laughed. Real laughter this time. Not the bitter sound from earlier, but something genuine and surprised. You're very strange, Ethan Brooks. Yeah, I get that a lot. She moved to the window, looking out at the street below. This neighborhood, it's so different from what I'm used to. People actually know their neighbors. Kids play outside. It feels... She searched for the word. Real. It is real. It's just not your reality. Maybe it should be. Maybe I've spent so long building an empire that I forgot to build a life. Lena turned back to him. Do you ever regret it? Choosing this over something bigger? This is bigger, Ethan said simply. My daughter knows she's loved. She has a home and stability and a father who shows up. That's bigger than any empire I could build. You're going to make me cry again. Sorry. Don't be. Lena checked her phone. 3:30? I should go soon. Let you get back to your life. Where will you go? Rachel's arranging a secure location, somewhere James can't find me until we're ready to engage publicly. She hesitated. I don't know how to thank you for today. You don't need to. Yes, I do. You risked everything, your job, your reputation, maybe even your freedom, for a stranger. That matters. That changes things. Ethan thought about that, about how one morning could reshape the trajectory of multiple lives. Maybe we both changed things. Maybe that's what happens when people choose courage over convenience. Lena crossed the room and unexpectedly hugged him. Brief but genuine, the embrace of someone remembering how to be human instead of just powerful. "If you ever need anything," she said quietly. "Anything at all. You have my number now. Use it." "I will." She gathered her things, transformed back into the coat that had carried her through her escape. At the door, she paused. "Your daughter is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Tell her—" Lena stopped. "Tell her that today her father showed a stranger what kindness looks like, and that stranger won't forget it." Then she was gone, disappearing down the stairs and into the waiting car that would carry her toward whatever came next. Ethan stood in his doorway and watched until the vehicle turned the corner, taking with it this strange, intense woman who'd blown through his life like a storm. The apartment felt different now, quieter, smaller, but somehow charged with the residue of everything that had happened. Ethan cleaned up, erasing the evidence of Lena's presence, and tried to figure out what he was going to tell Mia about why he was home early on a Saturday. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from Lena's number. "Thank you for reminding me who I'm supposed to be. L." He didn't respond. Some moments didn't need words. They just needed to be witnessed and remembered. At 4:45, Ethan left to pick up Mia, walking the familiar route to the community center. The city moved around him like it always did, indifferent to personal crisis, carrying on with the business of existing. And as he walked, Ethan thought about bridges burned and choices made, about courage and consequence, about the strange mathematics of helping someone when it cost you everything. He thought about Lena, wherever she was now, preparing for the battle of her life. And he hoped she won. Mia was waiting on the community center steps with her backpack and a cardboard robot she'd apparently constructed during free time. Its body made from a cereal box and its arms from paper towel tubes wrapped in aluminum foil. She spotted Ethan, and her whole face lit up in a way that still, after 8 years, made his chest ache with the sheer privilege of being her father. "Dad, look what I made! Her name is Stella, and she's going to explore distant galaxies and send back data about habitable planets." Mia thrust the robot forward, then noticed his expression. "Why do you look weird?" "Do I look weird?" "Yeah, like when you're trying to figure out how to tell me something I won't like." Ethan crouched down to her eye level, wondering not for the first time how this small person had developed such devastating emotional intelligence. "I lost my job today." Mia's eyes widened. "Did you do something bad?" "I helped someone who needed help." "My boss didn't agree with how I did it." "But helping people is good." "Usually, yeah. But sometimes helping people is complicated and has consequences." Ethan touched the robot's foil arm gently. "We're going to be okay, though. I promise." Mia processed this with the serious consideration she applied to all important information. "Are we going to have to move?" "No. We have enough savings to cover rent for a while, and I'll find another job. It might just take some time." "Okay." She adjusted her backpack straps. "Can we still get pizza on Fridays?" "We can still get pizza on Fridays." "Then it's okay." Mia took his hand as they started walking home. "Who did you help?" "A woman who was in a bad situation. She needed someone to believe her when she said something was wrong." "Did people not believe her?" "Some people didn't want to believe her because it was inconvenient." Mia was quiet for half a block, thinking. "Mrs. Patterson says that sometimes doing the right thing makes people mad because it shows them they didn't do the right thing. Is that what happened?" "Mrs. Patterson is very wise. And yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened." They walked past the Greek bakery, closed now, its windows dark, and the laundromat where Mrs. Chen was folding what looked like a mountain of towels. She waved, and Ethan waved back, grateful for the ordinary rhythm of his neighborhood, for the way life continued regardless of personal crisis. "Dad?" Mia's voice was smaller now. "Are you sad that you lost your job?" "A little. But mostly, I'm okay with it because I know I made the right choice, and that matters more than being comfortable." That's what Mom used to say, about choices mattering. Your mom was smart about a lot of things. They climbed the stairs to their apartment, and Mia ran ahead to put Stella the robot on the windowsill where she could observe the universe. "Oh," Ethan started dinner, spaghetti. simple and reliable, while Mia chattered about her day, about the coding lesson where they'd learned about loops and variables, about how her friend Emma had a theory that Mars used to have water parks before the atmosphere disappeared. It was so profoundly normal that Ethan felt something in his chest unclench. This was what mattered. This kitchen, this child, this life they'd built from the wreckage of loss. Whatever chaos existed in Lena's world, whatever battles she was fighting, they were separate from this. He'd helped her, and now she was gone, and life would continue. Except his phone kept buzzing. The first text came during dinner, an unknown number with a news link. Hartwell Technologies CEO accuses fiancé of corporate espionage. Billionaire bride's wedding day, bombshell rocks tech world. The second came while Mia was doing homework. Another link, this time to a statement from James's lawyers threatening defamation suits and calling Lena's accusations the desperate fabrications of a woman unable to handle the pressures of both business and personal commitment. The third arrived at 8:30, just after Mia had gone to bed. This is Rachel Martinez, Lena's CFO. She wanted you to know the statement is holding. Media coverage is intense but mostly factual. Thank you for today. Your kindness made a difference. Ethan stared at that last message for a long time, then turned his phone off and tried to pretend that he could just step back into his regular life as if nothing had changed. But 3 days later, everything changed again. Monday morning started with Ethan dropping Mia at school and then coming home to a silent apartment and the uncomfortable reality of unemployment. He'd already started applying for driving positions with other companies, but Premium Executive had been one of the better operations in the city, and most places wanted references he no longer had. He was halfway through an application for a courier service when someone knocked on his door. Not the casual neighbor knock or the delivery driver knock, but the official knock, measured and authoritative in a way that made his pulse kick up. Ethan opened the door to find two men in expensive suits. The one in front had gray hair and carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. The one behind him was younger, broader, and had the alert stillness of professional security. "Ethan Brooks?" the older man asked. "Yes. My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney with Hartwell Technologies. May we come in?" Every instinct told Ethan this was a terrible idea, but refusing seemed worse. He stepped back and let them enter, watching as they assessed his apartment with the quick evaluation of people trained to notice everything. "Mr. Brooks, I'll be direct," Chen said, setting his briefcase on the coffee table with deliberate care. "You provided assistance to Lena Hartwell this past Saturday. Assistance that, while well-intentioned, has created certain complications. If this is about the car, this isn't about the vehicle. Premium Executive was compensated fully, and all charges were dropped." Chen opened the briefcase and removed a folder. "This is about the fact that you are now connected to a very public, very contentious legal battle. James Whitmore's legal team has identified you as a potential witness and possible accomplice to what they're characterizing as Miss Hartwell's mental breakdown and subsequent irrational behavior." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "I didn't do anything illegal." "I believe you. Miss Hartwell believes you. But Mr. Whitmore is a resourceful man with access to considerable legal firepower, and he's looking for any angle that might discredit Miss Hartwell's accusations. Your involvement, a driver who kidnapped the bride and took her to an undisclosed location, is exactly the kind of narrative they can exploit." "I didn't kidnap anyone. She asked for help." "I know. But perception matters more than truth in legal proceedings, especially early on." Chen pulled out a document. "Which is why Miss Hartwell has instructed me to offer you legal representation at no cost, protection from any harassment or legal action stemming from your assistance, and compensation for the income you've lost due to your termination." Ethan stared at the papers. "Why would she do that?" "Because you helped her when no one else would, and because she doesn't want you to suffer consequences for doing the right thing." Chen set the document on the table. "There's also a job offer. Miss Hartwell needs someone she can trust in her security detail, someone who isn't connected to her usual circles, who doesn't have divided loyalties. The position would include health insurance, a substantial salary increase from your previous employment, and flexible hours to accommodate your parenting responsibilities." She wants to hire me? As security? As personal security, yes. You demonstrated sound judgment, discretion, and integrity under pressure. Those are rare qualities, Mr. Brooks. Miss Hartwell values them. The security guard who'd remained silent spoke up. For what it's worth, I've worked executive protection for 15 years. What you did Saturday, getting her out of a hostile situation, maintaining her safety while she regrouped, that's textbook crisis management. You have good instincts. Ethan sat down slowly, trying to process this. 3 days ago, he'd helped a woman in distress and lost his job. Now that same woman was offering him legal protection in a position that would solve his immediate financial problems. It felt like something from a different universe. What if I say no? He asked. Chen's expression didn't change. Then we'll still provide the legal representation and protection. Miss Hartwell was clear about that. Your help came with no strings attached. This job offer is separate, contingent only on whether you want it. Can I think about it? Of course. But I should tell you that Mr. Whitmore's team has been asking questions about you, about your background, your employment history, your family situation. They're looking for leverage, Mr. Brooks. Having legal representation isn't optional at this point. It's necessary. Whether you take the job or not, you're already involved in this situation. After they left, Chen's business card on the table next to a contract Ethan hadn't signed and legal documents he didn't fully understand. He sat in the quiet of his apartment and tried to make sense of what his life had become. He'd helped someone. That was all. He'd opened a door when someone was drowning, and now he was being pulled into currents he didn't know how to navigate. His phone rang. An unknown number that he almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Ethan, it's Lena. Her voice sounded different than it had in his apartment, more controlled but also more tired, like she'd been fighting for 3 straight days without sleep. Your lawyer just left, Ethan said. I know, I wanted to call myself, but Chen insisted on handling the official part first, legal protocols and all that. She paused. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me. I chose to help you. And now you're dealing with consequences I should have anticipated. James is vicious when he's cornered, and he's very cornered right now. The evidence we released is solid. Shell corporations, forged signatures, illegal financial maneuvering. His lawyers are scrambling, which means they're attacking any weak point they can find. And I'm a weak point. You're a variable they don't control. They don't know what you saw, what I told you, whether you have information that could strengthen my case. So they're trying to discredit you preemptively, paint you as either incompetent or complicit or both. Lena's voice sharpened. I won't let that happen. You helped me when you didn't have to, and I'm not going to let James destroy you for it. Is that why you're offering me a job? To protect me? I'm offering you a job because I need someone I can trust, and you've already proven you're trustworthy. Everything else is just practicality. She was quiet for a moment. But you should know what you'd be signing up for. The situation is going to get worse before it gets better. James has resources and connections I'm still discovering. My board is nervous. My stock price dropped 8% this morning. There are going to be depositions and media scrutiny and probably some very uncomfortable publicity. Anyone close to me is going to be affected by that, including your security team. Especially my security team. You'd be visible, documented, potentially called to testify about what happened Saturday, about what I told you, about your observations of my mental state. It won't be easy or comfortable. Ethan thought about Mia, about keeping her life stable and protected, about whether accepting this job meant exposing her to a level of chaos they'd spent 2 years carefully avoiding. Can I ask you something? He said. Anything. Why me? You have access to professional security firms, people with military backgrounds and tactical training. Why offer this to a driver who helped you one time? Lena was quiet long enough that Ethan thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice was softer, less guarded. Because when I was falling apart in that bridal suite, when I just discovered that the man I was about to marry had spent a year systematically positioning himself to steal everything I'd built, you didn't see a business opportunity or a liability or a headline. You saw a person who needed help. And you helped. Not because it benefited you, it clearly didn't, but because it was the right thing to do. She took a breath. I've spent 10 years surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, connections, reflected glory, whatever. You're the first person in longer than I can remember who just wanted to help. That matters to me. And right now, I need people around me who see me as a person instead of a resource. Ethan looked around his small apartment, at the evidence of the life he'd built with Mia, at the precarious stability they'd achieved through careful budgeting and controlled risks. Taking this job meant stepping into chaos, but not taking it meant staying vulnerable to legal threats he couldn't afford to fight. I need to talk to my daughter, he said finally. She's 8, but she's smart. This decision affects her life too. I need to make sure she understands what we'd be getting into. Of course. Take whatever time you need. The offer stands regardless. Thank you. For the legal protection, for the job offer, for... Ethan stopped, searching for words. For seeing me too. For not treating me like I'm disposable just because I don't have money or power. Ethan, Lena's voice was gentle. You're one of the least disposable people I've ever met. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. After the call ended, Ethan sat with his decision until it was time to pick up Mia from school. He spent the walk thinking about how to explain the situation in terms an 8-year-old could understand, how to present options without scaring her, how to be honest about risk while still providing security. But when Mia came bounding out of school, she wasn't thinking about any of that. She was excited because they'd watched a documentary about the Mars rover, and she had 17 new questions about autonomous navigation systems. They walked home talking about robots and remote sensing, and Ethan let himself have this normal moment before everything potentially changed again. They made grilled cheese for dinner, Mia's request. And afterward, when they were sitting at the kitchen table with the plates cleared, Ethan took a breath and jumped in. Remember how I told you I helped someone on Saturday? The woman who needed to get away from a bad situation? Mia nodded, suddenly attentive in the way kids got when they sensed important information coming. Her name is Lena, and the situation she was in is more complicated than I realized. There's going to be a lot of public attention on what happened, and because I helped her, some of that attention might come to us too. Like on the news? Maybe. I hope not, but maybe. And Lena wants to make sure we're protected from any problems that might cause, so she's offered me a job working for her company, helping keep her safe while all this gets sorted out. Would you be like a bodyguard? Sort of. More like security, making sure she stays safe during meetings and public appearances. Mia considered this with the seriousness she applied to all major decisions. Would it pay better than driving? Yes, better salary, better benefits, more stable hours. Would we still live here? Yeah, same apartment, same school, same neighborhood. Would I get to meet her? Ethan hadn't expected that question. I don't know, maybe. Why? Because if you're going to work for someone, I should know who they are. That's what you always tell me about choosing friends, that I should pay attention to how people treat other people. Mia tilted her head. How does she treat people? Honestly, I think she's trying to figure that out. She spent a long time in a world where everyone wanted something from her, and she forgot how to trust people. But when I helped her, she didn't treat me like I was beneath her, or like my help didn't matter. She treated me like an equal. That's good. Equals are important. Mia picked at a remaining cheese string on her plate. Are you scared? A little. This is different from anything I've done before, and there might be some difficult moments while everything gets sorted out. But I think it's a good opportunity. I think it could be good for us. Will you still be able to pick me up from school? Yes. That's non-negotiable. You're my priority, always. Mia was quiet for a long moment, and Ethan watched the thoughts move behind her eyes, the calculations and considerations of a child who'd already learned that life could change suddenly and irrevocably. Mom would say you should do it, Mia said finally. She always said that brave people help other people even when it's hard, and that scared is okay as long as you do the thing anyway. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Yeah, she did say that. So you should take the job, and I want to meet Lena. Because anyone who saw that you're a helper must be pretty smart. He pulled Mia into a hug, this remarkable small person who understood courage better than most adults. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just notice it more when I agree with you. The next morning, Ethan called David Chen and accepted the position. By afternoon, he'd signed contracts, undergone a background check that felt invasive but necessary, and been briefed by Rachel Martinez on what the next few weeks would look like. There would be training, basic security protocols, threat assessment, communication systems. There would be a detailed schedule of Lena's public appearances and the potential risk associated with each. And there would be a meeting with Lena herself to establish boundaries and expectations. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning at a secure office location in Midtown, not Hartwell Technologies headquarters, which had become a circus of media attention, but a private space where Lena could work without constant surveillance. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in the closest thing he owned to professional attire. The office was on the 23rd floor of a building that catered to short-term executive rentals, all sleek furniture and abstract art, and the smell of expensive coffee. Lena was already there, sitting at a conference table with Rachel and two other people Ethan didn't recognize. She looked different than she had in his apartment. Put together, professional, every inch the billionaire CEO. But when she saw him, something in her expression softened. "Ethan, thank you for coming, and thank you for accepting the position." She gestured to the others. "You've met Rachel. This is Marcus Webb, head of corporate security, and Jennifer Soto, my executive assistant. They'll be your primary contacts for scheduling and logistics." Marcus stood and shook Ethan's hand with the grip of someone who'd spent time in the military. "Good to have you on board. I've read your file. EMT background, clean record, strong instincts. That's exactly what we need right now." "I appreciate the opportunity." "Let's be clear about something," Lena said, her voice taking on the tone of someone used to running meetings. "This position isn't charity. You're here because you demonstrated qualities I need in my immediate circle: judgment, discretion, and integrity. But it's also going to be demanding. James's legal team is filing motions to access my communications, my schedule, my financial records. They're trying to build a case that I'm unstable, irrational, unable to lead my own company. Anyone close to me is going to be scrutinized." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because scrutiny for someone like you means background checks, social media analysis, interviews with neighbors and former employers. They're going to dig into your life looking for anything they can use to discredit you, which by extension discredits me. Your privacy is about to become extremely limited." Ethan thought about his quiet life, about the deliberate anonymity he'd maintained since Sarah's death. "What about my daughter? Will they go after her?" "We'll do everything possible to keep Mia out of this," Rachel interjected. "School security has been notified. We've flagged her name in our monitoring system, so we're alerted to any unusual inquiries. And we've arranged for additional background checks on anyone who has regular contact with her: teachers, after-school program staff, even the parents of her close friends." "That seems excessive." "It's necessary," Marcus said flatly. "James Whitmore has private investigators on retainer who specialize in finding leverage. They're not above using family members, especially children, to apply pressure. We're not trying to scare you, just being realistic about the threat landscape." Lena was watching Ethan's face carefully. "If this is too much, if you want to back out, now is the time. There's no judgment. I'll still provide legal protection and compensation for your lost income. But once you're officially part of my security detail, extraction becomes complicated." Ethan looked around the table at these people who operated in a world so different from his own, who talked about threat landscapes and monitoring systems and leverage like they were discussing the weather. Part of him wanted to walk away, to return to his simple life where the biggest crisis was covering rent and the deepest concern was Mia's happiness. But he thought about Lena's face in that cathedral mirror, about the courage it took to walk away from everything, about the fact that she'd built an empire and was now fighting to keep it from being stolen by someone who'd pretended to love her. "I'm in," he said. "But I need one guarantee." "Name it." "If at any point this situation becomes a direct threat to my daughter's safety or well-being, I'm out. No negotiation, no delayed extraction. I walk away immediately." "Agreed," Lena said without hesitation. "Mia's safety is non-negotiable. If we can't protect her, we end this." They spent the next 2 hours going over protocols and procedures, reviewing Lena's schedule for the coming weeks, discussing potential security concerns at various events. There were depositions scheduled, board meetings that might turn hostile, a press conference where Lena would address the allegations publicly for the first time. Each event carried its own risks, its own potential for confrontation. "The press conference is the big one," Rachel explained, pulling up a presentation on the conference room screen. We're doing it next Wednesday at the Hartwell Technologies headquarters. Full media presence, live streaming, the works. Lena will present evidence of James's corporate espionage, answer questions, and make her position absolutely clear. It's our opportunity to control the narrative before his team can muddy the waters further. What's the security concern? Ethan asked. James will be there, Marcus said, or his representatives will be. And they're going to try to rattle Lena, get her to say something they can use against her, maybe even provoke a confrontation they can spin as evidence of instability. Your job is to stay close, maintain a calm presence, and be ready to extract her if things get heated. Extract her from her own press conference? If necessary. We've seen hostile shareholders get physical at these things, protesters who slip through security. Hell, we had a situation 2 years ago where someone threw a milkshake at a CEO during an earnings call. Point is, anything can happen when emotions run high and cameras are rolling. Ethan absorbed this, trying to reconcile his new reality with the life he'd been living just 5 days ago. He was going to stand in a room full of reporters and cameras and hostile corporate rivals, responsible for protecting a woman who was worth billions and fighting for her company's survival. It was so far outside his experience that it felt surreal. You're going to be fine, Lena said quietly, and he realized she'd been watching him process all of this. Marcus and his team will handle the technical security. Your role is simpler. You're there as a known, trusted presence, someone I can look at during difficult moments and remember why I'm fighting this battle in the first place. That's a lot of pressure. No pressure at all. You just have to be who you already are. Someone who does the right thing even when it's hard. That's all I need from you. The meeting wrapped up with schedules distributed and communication systems established. Ethan would start Monday with a week of intensive training, then move into active duty the following Monday in time for the press conference. His salary would start immediately, backdated to cover the days he'd been unemployed. Health insurance would kick in within 30 days. As everyone else filed out, Lena gestured for Ethan to stay. They stood alone in the conference room, and for the first time since he'd entered, she let the professional mask slip slightly. Are you sure about this? She asked. Really sure? Because once we announce you as part of my security detail, there's no invisibility. You become part of the story. I know. Your life is going to change. People are going to have opinions about you, about your choices, about your competence and your motives. It's not going to be comfortable. Neither was watching you cry through a door and doing nothing about it, Ethan said. Look, I'm not naive. I know this is bigger than anything I've dealt with before. But I also know that sometimes you end up in situations you didn't ask for, and you have two choices, step up or step back. I'm choosing to step up. Lena smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her since that moment in his apartment when she'd laughed about jumping off a cliff. Mia wants to meet me. She thinks anyone who saw that I'm a helper must be pretty smart. She's right. I am pretty smart. Lena's expression grew more serious. Will you bring her to the office sometime? Before the press conference? Before things get crazy? I'd like to meet the person who taught you what courage looks like. She'd like that. Fair warning, though. She's going to ask you about Mars colonization and whether your company is working on any propulsion systems that might make interplanetary travel feasible within her lifetime. I'll prepare my best answer. They walked out together, and as Ethan left the building and stepped back into the ordinary chaos of a New York afternoon, he felt the weight of what he'd committed to settling onto his shoulders. This was real now. He was part of Lena's world, for better or worse, and whatever came next would reshape both their lives in ways neither could fully predict. His phone buzzed, a text from Mia. Mrs. Patterson says Mars has ice caps. If there's ice, there's water. If there's water, maybe there's life. Do you think we'll find aliens in your lifetime or mine? Ethan smiled and typed back. Yours, definitely. You're going to be the one discovering them. Then he headed home to his daughter and the life that was still his, still precious, still worth protecting above everything else. Whatever storms were coming, whatever battles Lena needed to fight, that remained his anchor, that apartment, that child, that love that had survived loss and was teaching him how to be brave again. The press conference was 6 days away, and Ethan had no idea what came after that, but he was going to find out. The training started Monday morning in a converted warehouse in Long Island City that Marcus's team used for security drills. Ethan arrived at 6 a.m. to find 3 other people already there, two former military personnel who moved with the coiled readiness of people trained for violence, and a woman named Diana who'd spent 15 years protecting CEOs in hostile markets overseas. Marcus ran them through scenarios with the efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Threat assessment, crowd management, extraction protocols, communication codes. They practiced forming protective barriers around a stand-in, practiced reading body language for signs of aggression, practiced staying calm when people were shouting and shoving and deliberately trying to provoke reactions. "Your job isn't to be a hero," Marcus said during a break, when Ethan was sweating through his shirt and questioning every decision that had led to this moment. "Your job is to be a constant. Someone Miss Hartwell's can rely on to stay level when everything around her is chaos. Can you do that?" "I did it for 3 years as an EMT, stayed calm while people were bleeding out or having heart attacks or trapped in crushed vehicles. This is just a different kind of emergency." "Good answer." Marcus handed him a water bottle. "But there's a difference. In an ambulance, you're trained to save people. In this job, you're trained to recognize when you can't and to prioritize accordingly. Miss Hartwell's safety comes first, always, even if that means walking away from someone else who needs help." Ethan took a long drink, thinking about that calculus. "And if she wouldn't want me to walk away?" "Then you walk away anyway and deal with her being angry at you later, better angry than dead." Marcus studied him. "Look, I know you helped her because you saw someone in distress and you have good instincts. But this job requires you to override those instincts sometimes. To make cold decisions about risk and exposure that might feel wrong but are tactically correct. Can you do that?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, "but I'll try." The training continued through Wednesday. By Thursday, Ethan could move through a hostile crowd with practiced efficiency, could spot potential threats in a sea of faces, could communicate via earpiece without breaking stride or drawing attention. His body ached from the physical drills and his mind felt overloaded with protocols and contingencies, but he was starting to understand the logic of this work, the way you created safety through preparation and positioning rather than reaction. Thursday afternoon, Marcus called a break and told Ethan that Lena wanted to see him at the temporary office. When he arrived, he found her sitting alone at the conference table, surrounded by documents and looking more tired than he'd ever seen her. "How's training?" she asked without preamble. "Intense. Marcus is thorough. He's kept me alive through 3 attempted hostile takeovers and a shareholder revolt. Thorough is his baseline." Lena pushed the documents away. "I wanted to update you before the press conference. James's lawyers filed a motion this morning seeking a temporary restraining order against me, claiming I'm misusing company resources and making defamatory statements that are harming his reputation and business prospects." "Can they do that?" "They can file anything they want. Whether a judge will grant it is another question. Our lawyers are confident the motion will be denied. We have too much documented evidence of his actual crimes. But it's a signal that James is escalating. He's not going to settle quietly or accept defeat. He's going to fight this publicly and viciously." Ethan sat down across from her. "What does that mean for the press conference?" "It means expect confrontation. James has been making calls to friendly media outlets, planning stories about my instability and poor judgment. Some of them are running with it. There was a piece in the Financial Chronicle this morning questioning whether I'm fit to lead a major technology company, citing concerns from board members and close associates. Those board members and associates are all connected to James somehow, but the average reader doesn't know that. They just see smoke and assume fire." "So you're going into the press conference already on defense?" "Exactly. Which is why Wednesday is so critical. I need to present the evidence clearly and compellingly, show that this isn't about personal drama or failed relationships. It's about corporate theft and fraud. If I can control the narrative, establish the facts before James's team can muddy them further, we have a chance. If I come across as emotional or vindictive or unstable, we lose." She looked at him with an expression that was equal parts determination and fear. "I'm terrified, Ethan. I've done hundreds of presentations, pitched to hostile investors, defended my decisions to skeptical boards, but this is different. This is personal and professional and public all at once. One wrong word, one emotional reaction, and everything I've built could collapse." "Then don't give them the wrong word. You know the truth. You have the evidence. Just tell the story the way you told it to me, clearly, honestly, without apology." "What if that's not enough?" Then at least you'll know you fought for something real instead of some polished version that doesn't exist. Ethan leaned forward. You walked away from that wedding because you chose truth over convenience. This is the same choice, just on a bigger stage. Be the person who walked away. That person is stronger than James's lawyers can handle. Lena was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier. Mia, you said you'd bring her by before things got crazy. I'd still like to meet her if that's okay. Maybe Saturday? Somewhere neutral, not an office. Maybe lunch. She'd like that. Fair warning, though, she's probably going to quiz you about your company's technology and whether you think artificial intelligence will develop consciousness within the next decade. I look forward to it. It's been a long time since someone asked me questions because they're genuinely curious rather than trying to find an angle. Lena stood up, gathering her documents. Thank you, Ethan, for all of this, for saying yes to something you didn't have to say yes to. Thank you for seeing me as more than just the help. That matters more than you probably realize. Saturday arrived with the kind of clear autumn weather that made New York feel almost manageable. Ethan and Mia met Lena at a small Italian place in the West Village, the kind of restaurant that catered to locals rather than tourists, and where the host greeted regulars by name. Lena had chosen it specifically because it wasn't fancy or pretentious, just good food and reasonable privacy. She was already there when they arrived, sitting at a corner table and looking deliberately casual in jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly grocery budget, but didn't advertise it. She stood when she saw them, and Ethan watched Mia assess her with the careful attention of a child who'd been told this meeting was important. You must be Mia, Lena said, offering her hand. Your dad has told me a lot about you. Mia shook her hand solemnly. He says you're very smart and also very brave. I wanted to meet someone who's both because usually people are only one or the other. That's a wise observation. What about you? Are you smart or brave? I'm smart. I'm working on brave. Mia climbed into her chair and immediately focused on Lena with laser intensity. Dad says you run a technology company. What kind of technology? And just like that, they were off. Lena explained Hartwell Technologies' work in accessible terms: data security, cloud infrastructure, artificial intelligence applications. And Mia peppered her with questions that ranged from basic to surprisingly sophisticated. Ethan sat back and watched two brilliant people connect over shared curiosity, and something in his chest loosened that he hadn't realized was tight. Do you think we'll colonize Mars in my lifetime? Mia asked over pasta that she was methodically organizing on her plate by shape. I think if anyone's going to make it happen, it's your generation. You're growing up with technology we couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. By the time you're my age, we'll probably have permanent settlements on Mars and maybe even further out. Would you want to go to Mars? Lena considered this seriously, giving Mia's question the weight it deserved. Part of me would. The explorer part. The part that built a company from nothing because I wanted to see what was possible. But another part of me likes gravity and breathable air and being able to walk outside without a spacesuit. That's fair. I think I'd miss trees. Mars doesn't have trees. We could bring seeds, grow them in biodomes. That's what pioneers do. They bring pieces of home with them to make new places feel less strange. Mia thought about this while working through a particularly stubborn piece of rigatoni. Is that what you're doing now? Bringing pieces of home with you while you figure out new things? Lena glanced at Ethan, surprised. That's exactly what I'm doing. How did you know? Because Dad did the same thing after Mom died. He kept her coffee mug even though he doesn't drink coffee. And he still makes her recipes even though some of them don't turn out right. He's bringing pieces of home with him while he figures out how to build a new home without her. The table went very quiet. Ethan felt his throat tighten, unprepared for his daughter's casual devastation, for the way she understood grief with a clarity that most adults never achieved. Your mom sounds like she was wonderful, Lena said softly. She was. She taught me that being scared is okay as long as you do the thing anyway, and that helping people matters even when it's hard. Mia looked at her father. That's why Dad helped you, because Mom taught him to. Then I'm grateful to her, and to you, for sharing him with me when you probably don't want to share him with anyone. Mia assessed Lena again, and whatever she saw must have passed some internal test because she nodded. It's okay. You need help, and Dad's good at helping. Just don't make him work too much. He needs to pick me up from school and make dinner and help me with homework. Those things are important. Those things are the most important, Lena agreed, and I promise not to interfere with them. Deal? Deal. They finished lunch talking about less intense topics: Mia's robotics project, Lena's first coding experience in a college computer lab, the relative merits of different pizza toppings. By the time they left the restaurant, Mia had decided that Lena was acceptable and had extracted a promise that Lena would come see her present her robot at the school science fair next month. Walking back to the subway, Mia slipped her hand into Ethan's. I like her. She talks to me like I'm a person, not just a kid. She's pretty good at that. And she's sad. Under all the smart and brave, she's really sad. Like you were after Mom died. Ethan stopped walking, crouching down to Mia's level. Yeah, she is sad. Someone she trusted hurt her badly, and she's trying to figure out how to be okay again. Are you going to help her be okay? The way Mrs. Chen helped you be okay by bringing us soup when you forgot to eat? I'm going to try. Good. Everyone needs someone to bring them soup. Mia adjusted her backpack. Even billionaires. The press conference was scheduled for Wednesday at 2 p.m., which meant Ethan spent Tuesday night not sleeping and Wednesday morning running through protocols with Marcus's team one final time. The Hartwell Technologies headquarters was a gleaming tower in Midtown, all glass and steel, and the confident architecture of success. By noon, media crews were setting up cameras in the main lobby where the conference would be held, and security personnel were running final checks on access points and crowd control barriers. Ethan arrived at 1 p.m. and found controlled chaos. Rachel was coordinating with the legal team, Marcus was running security checks, and Jennifer was managing a crisis involving the sound system. In the middle of it all was Lena, dressed in a sharp gray suit that somehow made her look both professional and formidable, reviewing notes with an intensity that suggested she was memorizing every word. How are you feeling? Ethan asked when he found a moment to check in. Like I'm about to jump out of a plane without knowing if the parachute works. She looked up from her notes. James is here. Or rather, his lawyers are. Front row, cameras ready, probably hoping I'll say something they can use in court. Then don't give them anything. Stick to the facts, present the evidence, answer questions calmly. You've done this 1,000 times. Not with my entire life on the line. That's when it matters most. That's when you show them who you really are. Marcus appeared beside them, earpiece in place and expression alert. We're 5 minutes out. Miss Hartwell, I need you positioned backstage. Ethan, you'll be standing to her left during the presentation, then move to the front row for questions. If anything gets heated, you extract her immediately. Clear? Clear. They moved into position. Backstage was a small area with monitors showing the assembled media, at least 50 reporters, cameras from every major network, photographers jockeying for position. Ethan could see James's legal team in the front row, 3 men in expensive suits who radiated calculated aggression. 2 minutes, Jennifer said through the earpieces. Lena closed her eyes, taking slow breaths. Ethan had seen this before. People preparing for moments that would define their lives, trying to find calm in the center of approaching storm. He'd done it himself, standing outside crushed vehicles or walking into domestic situations that could turn violent, looking for the still point from which he could act rather than react. Hey, he said quietly. Lena opened her eyes. You're not alone up there. Remember that. Whatever happens, you're not alone. She nodded, and something in her expression steadied. Then the light shifted, the crowd noise dropped, and Jennifer was counting down. 3, 2, 1. Lena walked onto the makeshift stage with her shoulders back and her head high, and Ethan followed 2 steps behind, hyper-aware of everything. The camera flashes, the murmur of voices, the way James's lawyers leaned forward like predators scenting blood. He took his position to her left and slightly back, where he could see her face in profile and monitor the crowd simultaneously. Thank you all for coming, Lena began, and her voice was clear and steady, projecting calm authority. I'm here today to address recent events and to present evidence of serious criminal activity that was perpetrated against me and my company. What I'm about to share is not personal vendetta or emotional response to a failed relationship. This is documented fraud, corporate espionage, and attempted theft that was systematically planned over 18 months. She clicked a remote, and the screen behind her filled with documents, incorporation papers for shell corporations, forged signatures, money transfers that traced a pattern of illegal maneuvering. Lena walked the room through it methodically, building her case piece by piece, never raising her voice or editorializing, just presenting facts with devastating clarity. James Whitmore spent the past year positioning himself to seize control of Hartwell Technologies through a combination of legal manipulation and personal deception. He did this while pretending to be my partner, my supporter, and eventually my fiancé. The wedding that I did not attend last Saturday was not canceled due to cold feet or personal instability. It was canceled because I discovered hours before the ceremony exactly what was being done to me and to my company. A reporter's hand shot up. Miss Hartwell, Mr. Whitmore's legal team has characterized your accusations as the product of emotional instability and poor judgment. How do you respond to that? I respond with evidence. Everything I'm presenting today has been verified by independent forensic accountants and submitted to appropriate regulatory authorities. This isn't about emotions, it's about documentation. Mr. Whitmore's team is welcome to refute the evidence if they can, but attacking my mental state is not a refutation, it's a distraction. Another reporter. There are reports that you fled your own wedding in a state of distress, that you were unable to complete the ceremony and had to be driven away by hired help. Doesn't that suggest exactly the kind of instability Mr. Whitmore's team is describing? Ethan felt himself tense, but Lena's expression didn't change. I made a conscious, calculated decision to leave a situation where I'd just discovered I was being defrauded. That's not instability, that's self-preservation. And the person who helped me leave did so because I asked for help, not because I was incapable of rational thought. Characterizing that assistance as evidence of diminished capacity is insulting to both of us. But you disappeared for hours. You turned off your phone. You avoided your family and your board of directors. That suggests I needed time to think without being pressured by people who might have been complicit in or blind to what was happening. Lena's voice sharpened slightly. I had just learned that the man I was about to marry had been systematically stealing from me. I took several hours to process that information and consult with trusted advisors before taking action. That's not a breakdown, it's due diligence. The questions continued, some hostile, some genuinely curious, all probing for weakness. Ethan watched Lena handle them with practiced precision, never losing her temper, never giving them the emotional reaction they were clearly hoping for. She was brilliant up there, commanding without being cold, honest without being vulnerable, strong without being inflexible. And then James's lead attorney stood up. Miss Hartwell, Daniel Reeves, representing James Whitmore. You've made serious accusations today, but what you're calling fraud looks remarkably like standard business practices that you yourself approved and signed off on. Isn't it possible that you simply regret your decisions now and are attempting to blame my client for your own poor judgment? No, it's not possible. Every document I signed was presented to me under false pretenses or with deliberately misleading context. Your client spent 18 months building a legal framework designed to give him control while making it appear that I was willingly ceding that control. That's not standard business practice. It's systematic deception. But you signed the documents. You attended the meetings. You never raised concerns until after the relationship ended. Doesn't that suggest the concerns are personal rather than professional? The relationship ended because I discovered the fraud, not the other way around. And I didn't raise concerns earlier because I trusted someone I shouldn't have trusted. That's a mistake, certainly, but it's my mistake to learn from, not his opportunity to exploit. Reeves smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. So you admit your judgment was compromised, that you made decisions based on personal feelings rather than business logic. Isn't that exactly what the board should be concerned about? A CEO who lets emotions override judgment? My judgment was compromised by deliberate manipulation, which is different from being inherently unstable or incompetent. And if we're questioning judgment, perhaps we should discuss your client's decision to commit multiple felonies in pursuit of a hostile takeover. That seems like remarkably poor judgment to me. The room erupted in flashes and shouted questions. Ethan saw Reeves's expression harden, saw him lean forward to say something else, something that looked like it would be even more confrontational. Marcus's voice came through the earpiece. "Getting hot. Be ready to move her." But Lena held her ground, answering 3 more questions with the same calm precision, refusing to be rattled or provoked. She ended the conference with a simple statement. "I built Hartwell Technologies from nothing, and I'm not going to let anyone take it from me through fraud or intimidation. The evidence speaks for itself. Thank you for your time." She walked off the stage with Ethan close behind, and the moment they were clear of the cameras, her composure cracked slightly. Not collapse, but the visible release of tension she'd been holding for 45 minutes of sustained assault. "You did it," Ethan said quietly. "You presented the evidence. You didn't give them anything they could use against you." Reeves almost got to me. That question about judgment, but he didn't get to you. You stayed controlled and turned it back on James. That's all that matters. Rachel appeared with Jennifer close behind, both looking simultaneously relieved and energized. "The preliminary response is good. Most major outlets are leading with the evidence rather than the personal drama. Social media sentiment is running about 60-40 in your favor, which is better than we expected given James's pre-conference narrative." "What about the board?" Lena asked. "Emergency meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. They want to discuss the allegations and the company's response. But the fact that you went public first, that you presented documented evidence rather than just accusations, that gives us leverage we wouldn't have had otherwise." They moved through the building toward a secure exit, away from the media circus in the lobby. Ethan maintained his position, alert for anyone who might try to approach or confront Lena while she was vulnerable. But the halls were clear, secured by Marcus's team, and they made it to the parking garage without incident. The car was waiting, an armored SUV with tinted windows and a driver who'd been vetted by 3 separate security firms. Lena climbed in, and Ethan followed, taking the seat across from her. As they pulled away from the building and into Manhattan traffic, Lena finally let herself exhale fully. "Thank you," she said, "for being there, for being the person I could look at when Reeves was trying to rattle me and remember why I was fighting. You didn't need me for that. You were brilliant up there. I needed to know someone was on my side, someone who didn't have a financial stake or a corporate agenda, just someone who believed I was worth defending." She looked out the window at the city flowing past. "Do you think we won? I think you survived the first real battle, and you did it without compromising who you are. That's winning by any measure I understand." Lena was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Mia asked me at lunch if I was sad. She said I was sad under all the smart and brave. She has a gift for seeing what adults try to hide. She was right. I am sad. I'm sad that James turned out to be exactly what I spent my whole career refusing to become. Someone who sees people as resources to be exploited. I'm sad that I built something beautiful and now have to fight to keep it from being stolen. I'm sad that doing the right thing costs so much." "But you're doing it anyway," Ethan said. "That's what brave means. Not that you're not scared or sad or exhausted, just that you keep going despite all of it." "Is that what you did after your wife died?" "Every single day. Some days I barely managed it, but Mia needed me to keep going, so I did. And eventually the keeping going became less about survival and more about actually living again." Lena met his eyes across the car, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or solidarity, or just the acknowledgement that they were both people who'd learned to be brave when they had no other choice. "I'm glad you helped me that morning," she said. "I'm glad you were the one standing outside that door when I needed someone to believe me. I'm glad I opened it." The car dropped Ethan at his apartment building with plenty of time to pick up Mia from school. He changed out of his suit and into regular clothes, washing away the residue of cameras and corporate warfare, and walked the familiar route to the school with his mind still processing everything that had happened. The press conference would be analyzed and debated, dissected by lawyers and journalists and social media commentators with opinions about things they'd never experienced. James would respond, probably viciously, and the battle would continue. But for now, Lena had done what she needed to do. She'd told her truth publicly and backed it with evidence, and that shifted the ground beneath the fight. Mia came bounding out of school with her backpack and another robot creation. This one smaller, made from what looked like a juice box and some pipe cleaners. "This is Comet," she announced. "She's Stella's sidekick. They explore together because exploring alone is lonely." "That's very wise," Ethan said, taking her hand as they started walking home. "How was the press conference? Did Lena do good?" "She did great. She was brave and smart and honest." "Did people try to be mean to her?" "Some did, but she handled it." Mia thought about this for several steps. "Good. Because being brave when people are mean is the hardest kind of brave. That means she's really strong." "Yeah, she really is." They walked home through the autumn afternoon, past the bakery and the laundromat and the handball courts where kids were already gathering for evening games. Normal life, continuing despite corporate warfare and media circuses and all the complicated ways adults found to hurt each other. That night, after Mia was in bed and the apartment was quiet, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Board meeting tomorrow morning. They'll either support me or try to remove me. Either way, thank you for today. Thank you for reminding me I'm worth fighting for." L. He typed back, "You're going to be fine. You've already survived the hardest part, choosing to fight instead of accept defeat. Everything else is just details." Her response came quickly. "Details feel pretty important when your entire company is on the line. Then fight for the details too, but remember that you already won the thing that matters most. You refuse to be diminished. That's the victory nobody can take from you." There was a long pause, and Ethan thought maybe she'd gone to sleep or gotten pulled into another crisis. But then his phone buzzed again. "Mia was right. You're good at helping. Thank you for helping me." He set the phone down and sat in the dark of his living room, listening to the city outside his windows, thinking about the strange path his life had taken. 2 weeks ago, he'd been a driver with a simple existence. Now he was part of something bigger and more complicated than he'd ever imagined, protecting a woman who was fighting to save everything she'd built while trying to remember how to trust people again. It wasn't what he'd planned, but then the best things rarely were. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, millions of lives intersecting and diverging, stories being written and rewritten, people choosing courage or convenience or something in between. And somewhere in all that chaos, Lena was preparing for tomorrow's board meeting, gathering evidence and arguments and whatever reserves of strength she had left. Ethan hoped it would be enough. He hoped she would win not just the battle, but the war, would emerge from this crisis with her company intact and her sense of self restored. But mostly, he hoped she would remember what Mia had seen so clearly, that sadness didn't mean weakness, that being scared was okay as long as you did the thing anyway, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was keep going when every instinct told you to quit. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, at least, they'd survived. And sometimes survival was its own kind of victory. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Thursday morning, which meant Ethan was at Hartwell Technologies headquarters by 7:30, running through security protocols with Marcus, while lawyers assembled in conference rooms and executives arrived with expressions that ranged from supportive to calculatingly neutral. The building had a different energy than it had during the press conference. Less chaos, more tension, the feeling of a courtroom before a verdict. Lena arrived at 8:15 looking like she'd slept maybe 3 hours, if that. She'd dressed for battle again, navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a way that said all business, no softness. But when she saw Ethan waiting in the executive hallway, something in her face softened slightly. "Ready for round 2? She asked. "Are you?" "I've been ready for this fight my entire career. I just didn't expect to be fighting people who were supposed to be on my side." She glanced toward the boardroom where, through the glass walls, he could see 12 people taking their seats around a massive table. Half of them built their fortunes investing in companies like mine. They understand exactly what James tried to do, but they also understand that scandal hurts stock prices, and they'll sacrifice me in a heartbeat if they think it protects their investment. Then remind them that you're the investment, that without you, Hartwell Technologies is just another tech company with good IP and no vision. That's either very inspiring or very arrogant. Can it be both? Lena actually smiled. Yeah, it can be both. Rachel appeared with last-minute updates. 2 board members who'd been on the fence had apparently responded positively to the press conference. seeing Lena's composure under fire as evidence of leadership rather than instability. James's legal response had been predictably aggressive, but offered no counter-evidence, just attacks on Lena's credibility and demands for independent psychiatric evaluation. The regulatory agencies had opened formal investigations into the shell corporations and financial transfers, which meant the fraud allegations were being taken seriously by people with actual authority. "That's good, right?" Ethan asked. "It's progress," Rachel said carefully. But board votes aren't decided by evidence alone. They're decided by confidence. Whether these people believe Lena can still lead effectively, or whether this scandal has damaged her beyond repair. Some of them are genuinely concerned about the company. Others just want to protect their investments. And a few are probably hoping she fails so they can install a CEO they can control more easily. So how does she win? By being undeniably competent. By showing them that she's not just surviving this crisis, but using it to demonstrate exactly the kind of leadership they need. Rachel checked her watch. 5 minutes. Ethan, you'll wait outside the boardroom. If things go badly, if they try to vote her out or force her into some kind of leave of absence, she'll need support immediately. And if things go well? Then we move on to phase 2, actually prosecuting James and dismantling his corporate theft scheme piece by piece, but one crisis at a time. Lena disappeared into the boardroom with Rachel and her lead attorney, and the door closed behind them, sealing off whatever would happen next. Ethan took his position in the hallway with Marcus, who'd stationed additional security at access points throughout the floor. Through the glass walls, he could see Lena taking her seat at the head of the table, could see the board members watching her with expressions that gave away nothing. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Ethan couldn't hear what was being said, but he could read body language, the aggressive posture of the man in the expensive suit who kept interrupting, the defensive gestures of the woman who seemed to be advocating for Lena, the calculated neutrality of the chairman who was probably weighing political implications alongside fiduciary duties. At one point, someone pulled up documents on the conference room screen and the room erupted in argument, voices raised enough that Ethan could hear the anger, if not the actual words. Lena sat through it all with rigid composure, speaking when called upon, presenting documents when challenged, never losing control even when it looked like she wanted to flip the entire table. At 11:17, the boardroom door opened and Rachel emerged looking like she'd aged a decade in 2 hours. "They voted to keep her," she said without preamble. 9-3. It's not unanimous, which would have been better, but it's decisive enough to show confidence. Lena retains full authority as CEO, no restrictions, no oversight committee, nothing that would undermine her position. "That's good," Ethan said. "That's survival. Now comes the hard part, actually fixing everything James broke." Rachel rubbed her eyes. "The board wants a full forensic audit of every transaction and agreement from the past 18 months. They want independent verification of all of Lena's accusations. And they want a comprehensive plan for how we're going to restore investor confidence and stabilize the stock price. All of which is reasonable, but it means Lena's going to be working basically nonstop for the next month. Will she be okay? Physically? Probably not. Emotionally? Ask me in a month." Rachel started back toward the boardroom. But she won the vote, which means she gets to keep fighting. For her, that's better than any alternative. The board members filed out over the next 10 minutes, some stopping to shake Lena's hand with varying degrees of warmth, others leaving quickly like they didn't want to be associated with the drama. The man who'd been arguing most aggressively brushed past Ethan without acknowledgement, but the woman who'd been defending Lena paused. "You're the one who helped her leave the wedding," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." Someone needed to. She glanced back toward the boardroom where Lena was still talking with the chairman. "I've worked with Lena for 6 years. I've watched her build this company through sheer force of will and brilliance. What James tried to do, it wasn't just theft. It was an attempt to erase everything she'd accomplished and claim it as his own. I'm glad she had someone in her corner when everyone else was too invested in the wedding spectacle to notice she was drowning. She's stronger than people give her credit for. She's stronger than she gives herself credit for. That's always been both her greatest asset and her biggest vulnerability." The woman offered her hand. "Margaret Chen, board member and former investor. If you're going to be around for what comes next, know that some of us are genuinely on her side. Not because of stock prices or optics, but because we believe in what she's built and who she is. I'll remember that. Thank you. Margaret left, and finally Lena emerged from the boardroom looking exhausted but victorious. She saw Ethan, and something in her expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or just the ability to finally drop the armor now that the immediate threat had passed. 9-3, she said. Could have been better, could have been a lot worse. You kept your company. I kept the right to keep fighting for my company. It's not the same thing. But she was smiling despite everything, that fierce smile of someone who'd expected to lose and had somehow won instead. The chairman wants weekly progress reports. The board wants full transparency on every decision. And 3 members are clearly hoping I'll fail so they can say they were right to vote against me. So basically, I'm on permanent probation while I try to undo 18 months of systematic fraud. When do you start? About 3 hours ago. The forensic audit team is already in conference room B. Legal is drafting prosecution recommendations for 3 different regulatory agencies, and I have a call with our major investors at 2 p.m. to reassure them that the company isn't imploding. Lena started walking toward her office, and Ethan fell into step beside her. Rachel thinks we can have preliminary findings from the audit within 2 weeks, full report within 6. If everything James did is as illegal as we think it is, we'll have grounds for criminal charges on top of the civil suits. And if it's not, then I spent the last 2 weeks destroying my reputation and my relationship with half the tech industry for nothing. She said it lightly, but the fear underneath was palpable. But I don't think that's what we'll find. James is smart, but he got arrogant. He thought I'd never question him, never audit the agreements he put in front of me. That arrogance will be what takes him down. They reached her office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan and enough square footage for most people's entire apartments. Lena stood at the windows for a moment, looking out at the city that had watched her build an empire and then nearly lose it. I used to love this view, she said quietly. It reminded me how far I'd come, how much I'd accomplished. Now it just reminds me how much I have to lose. You could also see it as how much you've already protected. You could have walked into that wedding and lost everything without even knowing it. Instead, you fought back. That's not loss. That's refusal to be defeated. Lena turned to face him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears she'd probably been holding back since the board meeting started. Why are you so good at knowing what to say? Because I spent 2 years not knowing what to say to my daughter about why her mother was gone. I got really good at finding words that were true even when they hurt, because false comfort is worse than honest pain. Honest pain, Lena repeated. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. Her phone buzzed, Rachel with an urgent question about the investor call. Lena answered it, shifting back into CEO mode with practiced efficiency, and Ethan realized this was going to be her life for the foreseeable future. Constant crisis management, endless meetings, the exhausting work of proving herself over and over to people who should have believed her from the start. He stayed through the investor call, standing quietly in the corner while Lena explained the situation with calm authority, answering hostile questions with facts and projections, rebuilding confidence, one skeptical investor at a time. He stayed through the meeting with the forensic audit team, watching her walk them through 18 months of documents with perfect recall, pointing out discrepancies and patterns that prove systematic rather than accidental fraud. He stayed through 4 more crises that erupted before 5 p.m. A major client threatening to pull their contract, a technical issue with a product launch, a reporter who'd somehow gotten Lena's direct line and was demanding comment on rumors that the board had actually fired her but was covering it up. By 6 p.m., when Ethan had to leave to pick up Mia, Lena was still going, still strong, still fighting, but visibly running on fumes and determination. You need to sleep, Ethan said at the door to her office. I will, eventually. After the legal briefing at 7 and the security review at 8 and the investor documentation that needs to be filed by midnight. Lena. She looked up from her laptop, and he saw the exhaustion there, the fear that if she stopped moving for even a moment, she might not be able to start again. What if I can't do this? She asked quietly. What if James broke so much that I can't fix it? What if the board was right to doubt me? The board voted to keep you, 9-3. They believe you can do this. They believe I'm the least bad option, That's different from actually believing in me. Ethan crossed the room and sat on the edge of her desk, breaking probably 6 different corporate protocols about professional distance. You walked away from your own wedding. You escaped a situation designed to trap you. You presented evidence to hostile media and survived a board meeting where people were actively hoping you'd fail. You've already done the impossible, Lena. Everything from here is just detail work. These details could destroy my company, or they could prove exactly what you've been saying, that you built something worth stealing, something so valuable that someone committed multiple felonies trying to take it from you. That's not failure. That's evidence of extraordinary success. Lena was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier. Go pick up your daughter. Tell her I'm still fighting, and I haven't given up yet. She already knows that. She's got you figured out pretty well. How does she do that? See through people so easily? Because she lost her mom and had to learn early that the world can be cruel and confusing. So now she pays attention to what people actually do instead of what they say they're doing. It's a survival skill dressed up as wisdom. I wish I'd learned that skill 20 years ago. Would have saved me a lot of pain. You learned it now. That still counts. Ethan left her there, surrounded by documents and screens and the evidence of a life spent building something extraordinary, and went to pick up Mia from her after-school program. They walked home in the late autumn dusk, and Mia chattered about a lesson on planetary atmospheres, while Ethan tried to shift his mind from corporate warfare to homework help and dinner preparation. Is Lena okay? Mia asked as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. She's fighting hard. It's exhausting, but she's not giving up. Good, because giving up would be sad. Stella never gives up on her mission, even when Mars is really far away and the journey is hard. Stella is very wise. The days that followed developed a rhythm. Mornings with Mia before school, days at Hartwell Technologies watching Lena navigate crisis after crisis, evenings back to normal life and homework, and the small rituals that kept their world stable. The forensic audit progressed, revealing layer after layer of James's fraud. The media coverage shifted as more evidence emerged, with even outlets that had initially been sympathetic to James starting to question his narrative. And slowly, painfully, Lena's position stabilized. 2 weeks after the board meeting, the regulatory agencies filed formal charges against James: securities fraud, corporate espionage, falsification of documents. His lawyers immediately went into damage control mode, but the evidence was overwhelming. More importantly, several of his associates started cooperating with investigators, providing testimony about the scope and planning of the scheme. 3 weeks in, Hartwell Technologies' stock price started recovering. Major clients who'd been nervous about the scandal recommitted to their contracts. 2 board members who'd voted against Lena called to apologize, admitting they'd underestimated both the severity of James's crimes and Lena's capacity to weather the storm. A month after the press conference, Lena called Ethan into her office and told him the main legal battles were essentially won. James would face prosecution, the company was secure, and the board had voted unanimously to not only support her continued leadership, but to restructure her compensation package to reflect the extraordinary circumstances she'd navigated. You did it, Ethan said. You won. We're still dealing with aftermath. There are civil suits, reputation repair, relationships to rebuild. But yeah, the immediate crisis is over. I'm still CEO, James is facing criminal charges, and Hartwell Technologies survived intact. Lena leaned back in her chair, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely relaxed. I couldn't have done it without you. Without having someone in my corner who didn't want anything from me except to see me succeed on my own terms. You didn't need me. You were always going to fight this battle. Maybe, but it's a lot easier to fight when you're not alone. She stood up and moved to the windows, looking out at the city that had witnessed her crisis and survival. I've been thinking a lot about what comes next, about what kind of company I want to build, what kind of leader I want to be, and I keep coming back to something Mia said at that lunch, about bringing pieces of home with you while you figure out new things. What does that mean for you? It means I'm creating a program, a fund, really, for single parents who are trying to rebuild their lives after loss or crisis or just really bad circumstances. Seed money for small businesses, scholarships for education, childcare support, legal assistance. All the things that might have helped someone like you when you were figuring out how to survive after your wife died. Lena turned to face him. I've spent 10 years building wealth, and I nearly lost all of it because I forgot that the point isn't accumulation. It's what you do with what you build. I want to do something that matters. That's going to help a lot of people. I hope so. And I want you to help me run it. Ethan blinked. What? Not full time. You still have security responsibilities, and I'm not letting you go from that role, but as a consultant, an advisor. Someone who actually understands what it's like to be a single parent navigating impossible circumstances. You'd help me design the program, review applications, make decisions about who gets funding and support. Real work, real impact, real compensation. Lena, I'm not qualified to... You're the most qualified person I know. You've lived it. You understand what people need when they're trying to build something from nothing while taking care of someone who depends on them completely. That's expertise money can't buy. Ethan thought about it, about the possibility of taking his own survival and turning it into something that might help others survive. Can I think about it? Of course. But know that the offer stands regardless of whether you take the role. You've already given me more than I had any right to ask for. Everything else is just me trying to pay forward what you gave me. That night, Ethan talked it over with Mia while they made dinner together. A new recipe they were attempting that involved more vegetables than Mia typically approved of, but that she was willing to try because it came from a cookbook Sarah had loved. So Lena wants you to help other people like us? Mia asked, carefully cutting a bell pepper with the child-safe knife Ethan had bought specifically for cooking lessons. Sort of. People who are trying to rebuild after something hard happened. Give them money and support to start businesses, or go back to school, or just get stable. That's good. We could have used that when Mom died and you didn't know how to do anything except be sad. Yeah, we really could have. Mia was quiet for a moment, concentrating on her pepper cutting. Would you have to work more? Miss more school pickups? Some, probably. But Lena knows you're my priority. She wouldn't ask me to choose between this work and being your dad. Then you should do it. Because helping people is important, and you're really good at it. Mia looked up at him with those devastating wise eyes. Mom always said that people who've been through hard things should help other people through hard things. That's how you make hard things mean something instead of just being sad. Your mom was incredibly smart. I know, that's why I remember what she said. So Ethan said yes. He took on the consultant role while maintaining his security position, and over the next several months, he and Lena built something that neither of them had quite imagined at the start. The Hartwell Renewal Fund launched with significant capital and a clear mission, supporting single parents who were building futures from the wreckage of their pasts. They funded a woman who'd survived domestic violence and wanted to open a bakery. They provided scholarship money for a single father pursuing a nursing degree. They covered legal fees for a parent fighting for custody after getting sober. Story after story of people choosing courage over surrender, and the fund gave them room to breathe while they fought. Ethan found purpose in it that surprised him. The way helping others navigate crisis helped him process his own. The way seeing people succeed despite impossible odds reminded him that survival itself was revolutionary. And working alongside Lena revealed dimensions of her he hadn't seen in those first chaotic days. Her genuine compassion beneath the corporate armor. Her ability to listen to stories of struggle without the condescension of someone who'd never struggled. Her fierce commitment to making sure no one felt as trapped as she'd felt in that bridal suite. James's trial happened in the spring, 8 months after the wedding that never was. The prosecution's case was airtight, documents, testimonies, forensic evidence that showed systematic fraud over 18 months. James's lawyers tried every angle, but the evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted on multiple counts, facing years in prison and financial penalties that would consume most of his wealth. His reputation was destroyed, his business connections severed, his attempt to steal an empire ending in spectacular public failure. Lena attended the sentencing. Ethan went with her, standing in the back of the courtroom while the judge handed down the verdict. When it was over, when James was led away in handcuffs, Lena walked out into the spring sunshine and took a deep breath like she was tasting freedom for the first time. "How do you feel?" Ethan asked. Vindicated, exhausted, relieved, sad. She looked at him. Is it wrong that I'm sad? He tried to destroy me. He deserves everything that's happening to him. It's not wrong. You loved him, or thought you did. That doesn't just disappear because someone betrays you. You're allowed to grieve what you thought you had, even while being glad it's over. Mia would understand that, wouldn't she? About how you can be sad and relieved at the same time? She understands that better than most adults. They walked together through the courthouse plaza, and Ethan watched Lena process the end of this chapter. She'd survived, she'd fought, she'd won. But winning had cost her things that couldn't be calculated in stock prices or legal victories. Trust, innocence, the belief that if you worked hard enough and built something good enough, people wouldn't try to take it from you. What now? Ethan asked. Now I keep building. The company, the fund, a life that's actually mine instead of something someone else designed for me. Lena smiled, and it was genuine, reaching her eyes in a way it hadn't in those early desperate days. And I keep remembering that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. That vulnerability isn't weakness, that walking away from something that's destroying you is stronger than staying and pretending everything's fine. A month later, Mia's school held its annual science fair. She'd spent weeks working on her project, a model of a Mars colony with functioning biodomes and a working explanation of how closed-loop life support systems could make long-term habitation possible. Ethan had helped with the technical aspects, but the vision was entirely Mia's, ambitious and detailed and full of the kind of optimism that only 8-year-olds could sustain. Lena came to the science fair. She'd promised weeks ago, and despite a packed schedule and a major investor meeting she'd had to reschedule, she showed up carrying a small robot she'd had her engineering team build, a companion piece to Stella and Comet, this one named Aurora, and designed for deep space exploration. Mia's face when she saw the robot was worth everything, pure joy and excitement, and the validation of being seen by someone she admired. They spent an hour at the science fair, Lena asking Mia detailed questions about her project, while Ethan watched two brilliant people connect over shared wonder about what was possible. Later, after the fair had ended and the awards had been given, Mia won second place, which she declared was better than first because first place means you did everything right, but second place means you tried something really hard. They went for pizza at the neighborhood place that had become their Friday tradition. Thank you for coming, Mia said to Lena over pepperoni slices. A lot of parents don't come to science fair. It meant a lot that you came even though you're not my parent. I wouldn't have missed it. Your project was incredible, professional level thinking about really complex systems. You're going to be designing actual Mars colonies someday. Maybe. Or maybe I'll do something else. I haven't decided yet. Mia took a thoughtful bite of pizza. Are you happy now? Dad says you were sad for a long time, but maybe you're getting less sad. Lena glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. Mia asked what she wanted to know, and there was no point pretending otherwise. I'm getting there, Lena said carefully. The sad parts are still there, but they're getting smaller. And I'm building new things that aren't about what I lost. They're about what I'm choosing to create. So yeah, I think I'm getting happier. Good. Everyone deserves to be happy, even when hard things happened. That's what Mom used to say. Mia looked at her father. Right, Dad? Right, kiddo. They finished their pizza talking about easier things, upcoming summer plans, a new robotics workshop Mia wanted to try, whether artificial intelligence would develop consciousness or just really convincing simulations of consciousness. Normal conversation between people who'd become something like family through crisis and choice rather than blood. Walking home afterward, Mia between them holding both their hands, Ethan felt something shift into place that had been loose since Sarah died. Not healing exactly. That suggested completion, and grief never really completed. But integration, maybe. The ability to hold loss and joy simultaneously, to build a life that honored what had been while embracing what was becoming. Thank you, Lena said quietly, pitched so only Ethan could hear over Mia's chatter about Mars, for opening that door, for seeing someone who needed help and helping anyway, for reminding me that asking for help isn't failure, it's trust. Thank you for fighting, for showing Mia what it looks like when someone refuses to be defeated. She needs to see strong women who don't give up, even when giving up would be easier. We all need to see that, Lena said. We all need to remember that walking away from something that's destroying you is an act of courage, not weakness. That building something new from the wreckage of what was is how we survive. They reached Ethan's building and Lena hugged Mia goodbye, promising to come to the next science fair and maybe even sponsor a robotics competition through Hartwell Technologies. She hugged Ethan too, brief but genuine, the embrace of people who'd been through fire together and emerged changed but intact. "See you Monday?" she asked. "See you Monday." She walked back toward where her car was waiting. Still security, still precautions, but less fear now, less constant vigilance. Just the practical acknowledgement that visibility came with complications, and complications required management. Ethan and Mia climbed the stairs to their apartment, and Mia immediately went to arrange Aurora with Stella and Comet on the windowsill, creating an exploration team ready to discover new worlds. "Dad?" Mia called from her room. "Yeah? I'm glad you helped Lena, even though it was scary and you lost your job and everything got complicated. I'm glad you did it." "Me too, kiddo. Because that's what brave people do. They help even when it's hard. And then good things happen, even if it takes a while." Ethan stood in the doorway watching his daughter arrange her robots, this remarkable person who understood courage and compassion with a clarity that humbled him. Sarah would have been so proud of her, he thought, proud of who she was becoming, proud of the lessons she'd absorbed and was turning into wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, Sarah would have been proud of him too. For opening a door when someone needed it opened, for choosing kindness when it cost him security, for building something meaningful from the wreckage of his own grief, creating space for others to heal while he healed himself. The city outside continued its endless rhythm, full of people making choices that would reshape their lives in ways they couldn't predict. Some would choose courage. Some would choose convenience. Most would choose something in between, navigating the complicated space between what they wanted and what they could survive. But tonight, in a small apartment in Queens, a single father and his daughter, and the knowledge that they'd helped someone build a life worth living, that felt like enough. That felt like victory. Lena had survived her crisis. Ethan had survived his, and together they'd built something that would help others survive theirs. That was what mattered. That was what courage looked like when you stripped away all the corporate warfare and media spectacle and legal battles. Just people helping people, choosing truth over convenience, building futures from the scattered pieces of their pasts. 6 months later, the Hartwell Renewal Fund celebrated its 100th recipient, a single mother who'd escaped trafficking and was using fund money to open a community center for other survivors. Lena gave a speech at the celebration, and Ethan stood in the back with Mia, watching this woman who'd fled her own wedding transform her survival into systematic change. "She's really good at this," Mia whispered. "The helping part." "Yeah, she is. Do you think she'll get married again? To someone nice this time?" "I don't know. Maybe someday if she finds someone who sees her as a person instead of a prize." "You see her as a person?" Ethan looked down at his daughter, at the calculating expression that suggested thoughts more complicated than her years. "Mia, I'm just saying, you see her, she sees you. You both help people and care about making things better. And she makes you smile more than you used to smile before you met her." "It's not that simple." "Why not? Mom always said that love is just choosing to see someone and keep seeing them even when it's hard. You do that. So does Lena." Mia shrugged. "I'm 8, not stupid. I notice things." After the celebration, after the speeches and the networking and the congratulations, Lena found Ethan in the lobby of the venue where they'd held the event. "Mia's very perceptive," she said without preamble. "You heard that?" "I have excellent hearing, one of my many skills." Lena smiled. "She's not wrong, you know. About the seeing part. You do see me, not the CEO or the billionaire or the scandal survivor, just me. That's rare. You see me too. Not the driver or the widower or the struggling single parent, just who I am underneath all the labels." They stood together in the lobby while the celebration continued in the event space behind them, and something passed between them that had been building for months. Recognition, connection, the possibility of something more than crisis management and professional collaboration. "I'm not ready," Lena said quietly, "for anything serious or complicated. I'm still figuring out who I am without James's manipulation, without the constant crisis. I need space to just be myself without trying to be someone's partner. I'm not ready either. I'm still learning how to be a whole person instead of just Mia's dad and Sarah's widower. And Mia comes first, always. Any relationship I have needs to work around that, not compete with it. So we're both not ready. Completely not ready. But maybe someday? Lena's voice was hopeful despite the uncertainty. Maybe someday, Ethan agreed. When we've both figured out who we are as individuals instead of defined by crisis or loss. When we can choose each other from wholeness instead of desperation. That sounds very healthy and mature. Mia would be proud of us. Mia sees everything. It's terrifying. They laughed, and it was easy, natural, the comfort of people who'd been through something extraordinary together and had emerged as friends first, with the possibility of more lurking in the undefined future. A year after the wedding that never happened, Lena restructured Hartwell Technologies to prioritize impact over pure profit, creating divisions focused on accessibility technology and environmental sustainability alongside their core business. The stock price adapted, investors who cared only about quarterly returns left, and new investors who valued long-term vision arrived. The company grew differently than it would have under James's planned leadership, more slowly perhaps, but more meaningfully, building things that solved problems instead of just generating wealth. The Hartwell Renewal Fund expanded, helping hundreds of families rebuild from crisis. Ethan took on more responsibility in the program, eventually transitioning fully out of security work and into program management. He helped design application processes that respected people's dignity, created support systems that provided more than just money, built networks of recipients who helped each other navigate the complicated work of reconstruction. Mia turned 9, then 10, growing into her brilliance and her compassion with equal measure. She remained obsessed with space exploration, but added interests in social justice and community organizing, declaring that colonizing Mars was pointless if humans couldn't figure out how to treat each other well on Earth first. And slowly, carefully, Ethan and Lena built something between them that grew from friendship into partnership, from crisis-born connection into deliberately chosen commitment. They took it slow, with Mia's approval and involvement at every step, building a relationship based on honest communication and mutual respect rather than desperation or convenience. 2 years after the wedding that never was, Lena asked Ethan and Mia to move into her brownstone in Brooklyn, not because she needed them or because it made financial sense, but because the three of them had become a family and she wanted to make that official. They said yes, and the integration was messy and complicated and occasionally frustrating, the way all real family formations are. But it worked because they chose it consciously, because they communicated clearly, because they remembered that love was an active choice rather than a passive feeling. 3 years after running away from her wedding, Lena stood in a small garden in Brooklyn with just 12 people present: Mia, Ethan's sister, a few close friends, Margaret from the board, Rachel, Marcus, and Ethan. No cathedral, no 500 guests, no performance for cameras. Just the people who actually mattered, witnessing two people choose each other with clear eyes and honest hearts. Mia stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands, serving as both witness and participant in the creation of their family. "Do you promise to keep seeing each other?" the officiant asked, a friend of Ethan's who'd known Sarah and understood that traditional vows didn't fit every story. "I promise to keep seeing," Lena said, looking at Ethan with the same expression she'd had in his apartment that first day. Vulnerable and determined and real. "To notice when you're struggling and ask how I can help. To respect your independence while offering support. To build something with you instead of trying to control or possess you." "I promise to keep seeing," Ethan replied. "To recognize your strength without expecting you to be strong all the time. To support your vision while maintaining my own. To choose you every day instead of taking you for granted. And I promise," Mia added, because she'd insisted on speaking during the ceremony, "to keep reminding both of you that love is about seeing people and helping them and bringing them soup when they forget to eat, because that's important." The officiant, trying not to laugh, declared them married. Not in the traditional sense, Lena kept her name, Ethan kept his. They maintained separate finances and clear boundaries. But married in the sense that mattered, committed, chosen, deliberately built rather than assumed. The reception was in Lena's backyard, catered by the bakery that the Hartwell Renewal Fund had helped launch, decorated by Mia and two of her friends who'd decided that fairy lights and origami cranes were the height of sophistication. They ate good food and told stories and celebrated not just a wedding, but the whole strange journey that had led to this moment. A runaway bride and a compassionate driver and a wise child, building a family from choice and courage and the willingness to see each other clearly. As the sun set and the fairy lights came on, Ethan found himself standing next to Margaret, who'd become a friend over the years of fund development and board meetings. "You did good," she said, watching Lena dance with Mia to music from a speaker someone had set up. "Both of you, you built something real from a situation that could have destroyed you both. We just kept choosing to see each other. Everything else followed from that." "That's harder than it sounds. Most people never learn it." Margaret raised her glass. "To seeing clearly, to choosing courageously, to building lives worth living." "To building lives worth living," Ethan echoed. Later, after the guests had left and Mia had fallen asleep on the couch, still wearing her flower crown, Ethan and Lena stood in their garden under the fairy lights and the stars, holding each other in the quiet. "Thank you," Lena said, "for opening that door, for seeing someone who needed help and helping, for choosing truth over convenience every single time, even when it cost you. Thank you for fighting, for refusing to be diminished, for showing both me and Mia what courage looks like when you strip away all the pretense. We're good at thanking each other. We've earned it." They stood together in the Brooklyn garden, this family they'd built from catastrophe and choice, and the future stretched ahead uncertain but deliberately created. There would be new challenges, there always were, complications and conflicts, and the ordinary difficulties of building a life with other people. But they would face those challenges with clear eyes and honest communication, with the knowledge that survival was possible, that courage was renewable, that love was a choice you made every day. Above them, stars burned in the darkness, the same stars that would one day guide Mia's generation to Mars and beyond. Below them, the city continued its endless motion, full of people navigating their own crises and choices. And here, in this garden, in this moment, three people who'd found each other through disaster had created something that mattered. A family built not on blood or convenience, but on the radical act of seeing each other clearly and choosing to stay. That was the story of Lena and Ethan and Mia. Not a fairy tale with a perfect ending, but a real story about real people choosing courage over comfort, truth over convenience, and love over fear. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything.